ocean flow जोटा कि टिके difficult part तमरा बुझिया पे बोली तो सेई जगह टिके डिस्कस करिया तीनटा क्वेश्चन रो इंडियन पैसिफिक हो अटलांटिक ओशन रो बॉटम टोपोग्राफी ऑफ द ओशन फ्लोर्स केना सेटा एक क्वेश्चन रो इंपोर्टेंट पार्ट हे पारे आ ता छडा के जितरे इंपोर्टेंट जिंस छै डिस्कस कर दबा तापर लास्ट क्लास रे देखिया अपन कोन करिया अच्छा देखा जाउची स्लाइड देखा गला अच्छा स्लाइड विजिबल होची
ना सर
नहीं कौन आज इंटरनेट पर करछ ठीक अछि आउ तो रिप्रेजेंट करछि देखिया ठीक अछि मो टिके वर्तमान बंद करी आउ थरे ऑन करूची देखिबा काय नो गड़बड़ होची जस्ट हां सब ये गोटे अच्छी ऑनलाइन प्रोग्राम अच्छी छटा बड़ छटा हाँ हो हाँ ହଉ 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 ଆଚ୍ଛା ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଦେଖା ଯାଉଥିବ ବୋଧେ
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍
ସ୍ଲାଇଡ୍ ଦେଖା ଯାଉଛି ତ
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଓକେ ଆଚ୍ଛା ଆଜି ଆମେ ତ ଡିସ୍କସ୍ କରିବା ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଓସେନ୍ ବଟମ୍ ଟୋପୋଗ୍ରାଫି ତା ଭିତରେ ଆମେ କଣ ଜାଣିବା ଦରକାର ଅଛି ଆ ଭିତରେ କଣ କଣ what are the components which we are supposed to know and what are the details of the unique features that is associated with the ocean bottoms. Ocean bottom is also a part of the earth's surface topography, but it is covered by water. So the ethical difference. A part of the earth's surface is exposed. That is what is we call it as the exposed part, and tapre jo toko rahi jaychi 70% of the area that is remaining within the water bodies of the oceans. But the topography is almost much more varied than the land itself. Then we are supposed to know something about more about the ocean topography, which implies understanding the configuration of the earth, configuration of the major landforms, configuration of the details of activities going on, the activeness of the earth's origin. ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ବିଷୟରେ ଟିକେ ଟିକେ ଇଣ୍ଡିକେସନ ଆମକୁ ମିଳିବ ତା ଛଡା କୋଉଠି କଣ ଅଛି as far as the resources concerned, environment concerned, people and characteristics are concerned ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଟିକେ ଟିକେ ଜାଣିବାର ସ୍କୋପ ମିଳିବ so that gives a background to why do you want to know the topography of the ocean bottoms. ତେଣୁ ଆମର ଯୋଉ ତିନିଟା ମେଜର ଓସେନ ଅଛି ପାସିଫିକ ଓସେନ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଓସେନ ଆଉ ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକ ଓସେନ ଏ ତିନିଟା ଓସେନର ଏଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ପିକ୍ଚର ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି ମୁଁ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ କ୍ଲାସରେ ଟିକେ ଡିଟେଲ ଦେଖେଇବି ଏଇଟା ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆଜି ମୋର ଇନଫର୍ମେସନ ଡିସ୍କସନ କରିବି so when we talk about a ocean Atlantic ocean ତାର ଏକ୍ସଟେନସନ ହେଲା ଏଇଠୁ ରହିଲା ଗ୍ରୀନଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ଏପଟେ ରହିଲା ନର୍ଥ ପୋଲ ନର୍ଥ ପୋଲ ପାଖରୁ ଏକ୍ସଟେଣ୍ଡ କରିକିରି ଆସିଛି ଟୁ ଦି ସାଉଥ ପୋଲ ଯୋଉଟାକି ଆଣ୍ଟାର୍କଟିକା ଓସେନ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ so this is extending such a long distance of about 4000 kilometers of distance. ଆଚ୍ଛା ଆ ଭିତରେ ଏଇ 4000 ଆଉ ଏଇଠୁ ଏତିକି ଡିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସ ଭିତରେ ହଉଛି ମାନେ it varies from 1500 to 2500 କିଲୋମିଟର ଭିତରେ ଡିଷ୍ଟାନ୍ସ ଅଛି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଜାଗାରେ ତେଣୁ ଏତିକି width ଆଉ length ର ଯୋଉ extension of the mass of water body and that remains between the North and South America and Europe and Africa ଏଇ ମଝିରେ ଯୋଉ ରହିଛି this is the land mass a water body which is called as the Atlantic Ocean. ଆଉ ୟାର origin ହେଲା it is related to the drifting of the continental plates or continental drift ଯୋଉଥିରେ କି this North and South America have shifted during the period of drifting of the continents in the Paleozoic era. Paleozoic era ରେ Carboniferous or Permian period ରେ that is the geological history ସେଇ ସମୟରେ this drift has started bringing this North and South America towards western side, opening this Atlantic Ocean. ତେଣୁ gradually ସେଥିରୁ shift ହେଇଛି Atlantic Ocean ର formation ହେଇଛି ଏ formation ସହିତ ଭିତରେ ରହିଛି କଣ what are the things that we find in the Atlantic Ocean, what is its uniqueness. ତେଣୁ ocean ର general configuration ହିସାବରେ ଗଲେ if we go by the standardized characteristics of all oceans ଖାଲି Indian Ocean ନୁହଁ କି Atlantic ନୁହଁ ସବୁ ocean ର ରହିଛି the landward side which is close to the land ଯାହାକୁ ଆମେ coast ବୋଲି କହୁଛୁ there is a coast line ଠାରୁ ସମୁଦ୍ର ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇଛି towards the interior ତେଣୁ the coast line ର ଯୋଉ portion ଯାକ ରହୁଛି coast କୁ ଲାଗିକି that is what is the coastal zone ବୋଲି ଆମେ ତାକୁ କହୁଛେ but this coastal zone is not confined only to the part of the sea, it is also part of the land where the coastal influence is felt. ତେଣୁ ଗୋଟେ parts of the land and a part of the sea that comes under the coastal zone. ଆଚ୍ଛା ତାପରେ gradually କଣ ହେଇଛି the sea gradually descends and gradually gets into the higher depth. ତେଣୁ the beginning part of the coastal zone is characterized by the continental shelf. ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ coastal zone ଠାରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିକି sea ର ପାଖାପାଖି 100 fathom पर्यंत 100 fathom माने about 600 feet depth 600 फुट depth पर्यंत जो रही that portion of the sea from the coastline is called as the continental shelf. तापर ପରେ continental shelf ପରେ then it extends. There is a zone where the land is sloping inside the sea towards the deep sea plains. ତେଣୁ ସେଇ ପୋର୍ସନଟାକୁ କୁହାହଉଛି ତାର କିଛି ଡାଇମେନସନ ନାହିଁ. It varies according to the place and position where this is formed. That is what is called as the continental slope. ତାପରେ continental slope cross କରିଗଲା ପରେ then it enters into a huge depression area that is called as the ocean deeps or deep sea plains or the abyssal plains. ତେଣୁ ଏମିତି ତିନିଟା ମେଜର ଜୋନ୍ ରହିଛି ଆମର. ତିନିଟା ମେଜର ଜୋନ୍ ରହିଛି ମାନେ ଓସେନର. ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ସେଲ୍ଫ ଜୋନ୍, ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ସ୍ଲୋପ ଜୋନ୍, ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା ଡିପ୍ ସି ପ୍ଲେନ୍ ଜୋନ୍. ତେଣୁ ୟା ଭିତରେ ଏଇ ତିନିଟା ଜୋନ୍ ଭିତରେ within these three zones we have many different type of topographic features just like as we find in the land surface. Land surface ଯେମିତି ଆମର mountains, ridges, rills, valleys, plains, plateaus, ravines ଯେମିତି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ରକାର features ରହିଛି. We also find similar type of and much more than that variations of different type of topographic features inside the ocean. ତେଣୁ ଆମର ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ if we go to this Atlantic Ocean, ଯଦି Atlantic Ocean କୁ ଯିବା, you can just have a look at this. ଏଇଠୁ ତ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇଛି. ଏଇଟା ହେଲା Labrador Sea area, ଏଇଟା ହେଲା Rickney's Range, ତାପରେ ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ଆମର this is what is Great Britain, UK, United Kingdom, ଏଇଟା ହେଲା Rockville Bank, Rockville Ridge. ତାପରେ ଏଇଠି ରହିଛି ଆମର ବେ ଅଫ ବିସ୍କେ, ତାପରେ ରହିଛି ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ମାଡେରା ପ୍ଲେନ୍, ଏଇପଟେ ରହିଛି ଆମର ସମ୍ ପ୍ଲେନ୍, ତାପରେ ଏଇଠି ରହିଛି there are different names that you are supposed to know. ଟିକେ ଟିକେ ଜାଣିବା ଦରକାର ଯେ ଆମେରିକାର ଏଇ ସାଇଡ୍ ଜାଗାରେ ଏଇଟା ଅଛି ଗଲ୍ଫ ଅଫ ମେକ୍ସିକୋ, ତାପରେ ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ନିଆସା ପ୍ଲେନ୍ସ, ଏଇଟା ହେଲା କ୍ୟାରିବିଆନ୍ ସି, ତାପରେ ଏଇ ଜାଗା ହେଲା ଆମର କ୍ୟାରିବିଆନ୍ ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡସ୍, Demersia plains, ଏମିତି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ନାଁ ଦେଇକି there are different places which are identified as individual topographic features of the ocean bottom. କାହିଁକି ନା ଯୋଉ deep sea plain ଭିତରେ at different places the depth is not uniform. There are pools of larger depth ଯୋଉ ଯାକ ଟିକେ ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ continuous area ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ଗୋଟେ basin ବୋଲି କୁହାହଉଛି, ocean basins. Means the depth is relatively uniform within that basin. ତାପରେ ଆସିଲେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ basin କୁ ଗଲା ବେଳକୁ ମଝିରେ ଟିକେ altitude ରେ variation ଆସିବ, then it gets into another. ତେଣୁ ଏମିତି ହେଇକି there are many basins and many submerged things which are inside the ocean. ତେଣୁ ଆମର continental shelf ଯଦି ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା, if we think of the continental shelf on this Atlantic Ocean along the ଏଇଟା ହେଲା Atlantic Ocean ର west coast, Atlantic Ocean ର ଏଇଟା ହେଲା east coast. ଏଇଟା land ର ହେଲା west ଆଉ ଏଇଟା ହେଲା land ର east. କିନ୍ତୁ ଆମେ ଯଦି ocean କଥା ଚିନ୍ତା କରୁଛେ then this part is the western part of the Atlantic Ocean, ଏଇ part ହେଲା eastern part of the Atlantic Ocean. So ଏଇଠି କ'ଣ ହେଇଛି, if we think of this continental shelf, Atlantic Ocean carries the highest most wide continental shelves among all other oceans. ସବୁ oceans ଭିତରେ ଏଇଟା ସବୁଠୁ ବେଶୀ continental shelf area ରହିଛି in the Atlantic Ocean. And see এই ଯୋଉ continental shelf that you see over here, এই ଯୋଉ ଜାଗାରେ ଦେଖୁଛ ଯୋଉ ଜାଗା deep blue ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି ସେ ଜାଗା deeper part of the sea, ଯୋଉ ଟିକେ light blue ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି ସେ ଜାଗା less deeper. ତେଣୁ ଆମର ଏଇ ଯୋଉ portion ଜାଗା ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି ଟିକେ less deep, these are the areas, ସେ ଜାଗା ଯୋଉ white ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି these are also the areas which are a part of the continental shelf. ତେଣୁ ଏଇଠି ଯୋଉ white ରେ ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି ଯୋଉ ଜାଗା that is also a part of the continental shelf. ଏଇପଟ ସାଇଡରେ continental shelf ବହୁତ ନେରୋ ଅଛି ଆଫ୍ରିକାରେ, କାହିଁକିନା ଏଇ ସାଇଡଟା ଅଛି ଆମର ମାନେ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ସାଇଡ, ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ଦି ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ସାଇଡ ଯୋଉଟାକି ପ୍ଲେଟ୍ ବାଉଣ୍ଡ୍ରିଜ ରହିଛି. ତେଣୁ ଯୋଉ ଜାଗାରେ ପ୍ଲେଟ୍ ବାଉଣ୍ଡ୍ରି ରହିଛି, ଓସେନିକ୍ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚେସ୍ ରହିଛି, ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ସାଧାରଣତଃ you will never find wider continental shelf. Wider continental shelves are found along those places where you don't have the trenches. ତେଣୁ ଏଇଠି ଆମର that the widest continental shelf ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଜାଗାଟା ରହିଛି that is Grand Bank and Dogger Bank, ଏ ଦିଟା ହେଲା area covering this Newfoundland Island. Newfoundland Island ଠାରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରି Great Britain ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ this entire area is one of the largest continental shelf areas, and that is also one of the most favorable zones for the fishing because of the less depth and more amount of mixing of the warm ocean current and the cold ocean current. ଦୁଇଟା ଜିନିଷ ଏଠି ମିଶେ, ତେଣୁ warm ଆଉ cold ମିଶେଇବା ଯୋଗୁଁ ଗୋଟେ ideal conditions ହୁଏ for different type of fishes. ତେଣୁ ଏମିତି ହେଇକି this is one of the ideal ଆଉ continental shelf wide ହେବା ଯୋଗୁଁ a lot of ମାନେ biodiversity is found in those. depth ଯେତେ ବେଶୀ ହେବ biodiversity ସେତେ କମି କମିଯିବ, depth ଯେତେ କମ ହେବ biodiversity ବଢିବ in the oceans because of the more penetration of sunlight and more seafood available in the planktonic form, and there is a beautiful ecosystem within the marine ecosystem prevails over such areas. So ଏମିତି ହେଇକି that is what the largest continental shelf is found along this. ତାପରେ along this western part of this Atlantic Ocean, along South America also you find a large number of continental shelf in those areas. ଏଠି ରହିଛି ଆମର Amazon river basin ର catchment area, delta ରହିଛି, ଏପଟ ସାଇଡ୍ ରେ ରହିଛି ମିସୋରୀ ମିସିସିପି ଡେଲ୍ଟା, ଏପଟେ ରହିଛି ସେଣ୍ଟ ଲରେନ୍ସ ରିଭର ତା ଡେଲ୍ଟା, ତାପରେ ଏପଟ ସାଇଡ୍ ରେ ରହିଛି number of rivers ଏମିତି ହେଇକି African rivers କିଛି ବି ରହିଛି ଏପଟରେ, ଏମିତି ହେଇକି there are quite a large number of situations that makes favorable for the extensive stretch of continental shelf of the Atlantic Ocean, which is much in dimension, much larger in dimension than Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So that is one of the unique characteristics of the Atlantic Ocean. Continental shelf ଛାଡ଼ିଲା ପରେ then we enter into the continental slope zone. And continental slope zone ବହୁତ quickly ଆସିଯାଏ ଏଠି, ତାପରେ it enters into the deep sea plains. କିନ୍ତୁ ଯୋଉ deep sea plains ଏଠି ଅତି ବେଶୀ ଭାବରେ ଦେଖାଯାଏନି, କାହିଁକି ନା at the middle of this Atlantic Ocean there is a mid-oceanic ridge. A mid-oceanic ridge is parallel to the coastline, ଯାହାକୁ ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ବୋଲି remnant of the drifting process. ଏଇ ଜାଗାରୁ drifting ହେଇକି both Africa and America they have shifted each other away from each other. So this is the mid-Atlantic ridge. Mid-Atlantic ridge ର northern portion ଟାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ Dolphin Rise, southern portion ଟାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ Challengers Rise. Challenger ଗୋଟେ expedition ହେଇଥିଲା, ସେଇ expedition ତା ନାଁ ଅନୁସାରେ ତାକୁ ଯେହେତୁ ସେମାନେ discover କରିଥିଲେ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡା ଜିନିଷ, ତେଣୁ ସେ ଅନୁସାରେ ତାକୁ nomenclature ଦିଆହେଇଛି Challengers Rise. Challenger was name of a ocean expedition ship, research ship, ଯୋଉଟାକି କାଲିଫର୍ଣ୍ଣିଆରୁ ଆସିକି ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ sample collection କରିଥିଲା ଏ ଏରିଆରେ। ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ଦିଟା ହେଲା mid oceanic ridge ର, ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ଦିଟା part. Northern part is Dolphin Rise and the southern part is Challengers Rise. ଏଇ ଯୋଉ rise ଯୋଉଟା ଅଛି, this is what is also called as the mid Atlantic ridge. Total ଦିଟା ଯାକ ମିଶିକି mid Atlantic ridge ବୋଲି କୁହାହଉଛି। ଇଏ ପୁରା ଏଇ ଗ୍ରୀନଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ପାଖରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ ହେଇକି ଆସିକି ଏପଟେ ଆଣ୍ଟାର୍କଟିକ ଓସେନ ପାଖରେ ଯାଇକି ମିଶିଛି। ଏଇଟା ରହିବା ଯୋଗୁଁ ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରାଲ ଏରିଆରେ the basin area of this Atlantic Ocean has been distorted. ତେଣୁ ଏଇଟା basin ଯାକ divide ହେଇଯାଇଛି। ତେଣୁ there is an area which is the basin area in this portion. There is another basin area in this portion. On this side is mountain, on this side is mountain. ଏମିତି ହେଇକି there are basins of different ଏଇଟା ହେଲା Guinea Plain and Guinea Agulhas basin. ଏମିତି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ନାଁ ଦେଇଛି, ଯୋଉଟାକି ତମେ ଟିକେ ମ୍ୟାପ ଦେଖିକି ତମକୁ ଷ୍ଟଡି କରିବାକୁ ପଡିବ by name and details you are supposed to know. ଟିକେ ଟିକେ ଜାଣିବା ଦରକାର କୋଷ୍ଟରେ କଣ କଣ ଫିଚର୍ସ ରହିଛି। ଆଚ୍ଛା, ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ତାପରେ କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ସେଲ୍ଫ ପରେ କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ସ୍ଲୋପ୍, କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ସ୍ଲୋପ୍ ପରେ ଡିପ୍ ସି ପ୍ଲେନ୍, ଡିପ୍ ସି ପ୍ଲେନ୍ ର ଏଇ ହେଲା ପିକୁଲିଆର କ୍ୟାରେକ୍ଟରିଷ୍ଟିକ। ଏଠି ଡିପ୍ ସି ପ୍ଲେନ୍ ଟା ଏତେ ବେଶୀ ଏକ୍ସଟେନ୍ସିଭ ହେଇପାରିଲା ନାହିଁ ବିକଜ ଅଫ ଦି ପ୍ରେଜେନ୍ସ ଅଫ ଦି ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରାଲ ମିଡ୍ ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକ ରିଜ୍। ଆଚ୍ଛା, ବିସାଇଡ୍ ଦିସ୍ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ମିଡ୍ ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକ ରିଜ୍ ଟା କଣ, ୟୁନିକ୍ ଫିଚର ଅଫ ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ଏ area where the volcanic eruptions are taking place. This is a point of divergence of plates. ଆମର American plates ଆଉ European and then African plate ଦିଟା ଯାକର divergence ଏଇଠୁ ହଉଛି। ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ଜାଗାରେ କଣ ହଉଛି ନା volcanic eruptions ହଉଛି। ସେ volcanic eruption ର ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ mountain peaks ଉପରେ ରହିଛି। जो पिक जाक विभिन्न आइलैंड ना रे वी नो इट आ भितर बहुत गुटे आइलैंड रही जगह ऊपर को देखा ए भितर ये जो ग्रुप टे देखा एसेंशियल ग्रुप ऑफ आइलैंड्स एटी आफ्रिकार ये कस्ट किसी रही देयर आर सम आइलैंड्स सबुठ पिकुलर है ये जगह जो आइलैंड अच्छी जो आइलैंड को लेकिन नेपोलियन को लेकिन एक्साइल कराइला डू यू रिमेंबर द नेम ऑफ दैट आइलैंड वेयर नेपोलियन वाज एक्साइल्ड नेपोलियन को कोठ लेके छड़ा वर्ल्ड वार पर डिफीट होला पर ये जगह से आइलैंड रो ना एठी अछि ए पाखरे कि कहि परिबो तम भितर एंड दैट इट वाज ए नो मेंस आइलैंड जोटी ताको नेकी छड़ा हेतला जस्ट भूली जाउछ टिके पर कहबी तो आई विल रिमेंबर इट एंड टेल यू ये जगह से आइलैंड ये जगह नेकी सिक्रेटली तापर छड़ाला तळे वर्ल्ड वार सरला पर when the France was defeated by the allied forces तापर he was taken to this particular place for exile अच्छा एमती there are many islands of volcanic origin on this mid oceanic ridge ए mid oceanic ridge ଆଉ ତା ଦେହରୁ କିଛି କିଛିଟା ଏଇ ଦେଖ ଏଠି ଗୋଟେ ଯେମିତି ବାହାରିଛି parallel transverse ହେଇକି ଏମିତି ଗୋଟେ ridge ବାହାରିଛି ଏଇପଟକୁ ଏଠି ଗୋଟେ ridge ବାହାରିଛି ଏଇପଟକୁ side so like this main ridge is at the center there are many transverse ridges also and by the transverse ridges there has been a number of basin conditions has developed so it is just like pools of different size and dimension but the depth of the Atlantic Ocean is relatively less than the both the oceans Indian Ocean और Pacific Ocean ଠାରୁ ये आर depth बहुत कम average depth ହେଲା आर about 4 kilometers if you go by that Indian Ocean ର ପାଖା 4 ରୁ 5 ଭିତରେ ଆଉ Pacific Ocean ର 5 ରୁ 6 ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ so that is the average depth of the uh, ocean ତେଣୁ ଆମର island ଗୁଲା ମାନେ there are continental shelf, there is a continental slope, there is a deep sea plains. Deep sea plain has been segregated into a number of smaller units of basins because of the presence of this dolphin rise and the challenges rise which constitute this mid-oceanic ridge. And mid-oceanic ridge is the remnant of our drifting of the continents of North and South America towards western side and the Africa and Europe towards the eastern side. Leaving that remnant, this is one of the very sensitive areas having a lot of volcanic eruption and the magma materials which are released at this mid-oceanic ridge, they are spreading on both the sides and these magma materials are pushing the plate on both the sides also. And during the Challenger's expedition in the last part of the 18th century and early 19th century, ଯେତେବେଳେ expedition ହେଇଥିଲା when they started collecting the samples of the rocks from these mid-oceanic ridge area ର ପାଖାପାଖି ଯୋଉଠି collection କଲେ so they collected the rock samples and then tested for the properties ସେଇ ସମୟରେ ସେମାନେ magnetism property को study କରିଥିଲେ ଆଉ जो paleomagnetism which is stored in the rocks କାରଣ ଗୋଟେ rock जो ସମୟରେ earth ର axis ଯେମିତି orientation ଥାଏ ସେ ଅନୁସାରେ ତାର magnetic field develop କରିଥାଏ ଆଉ rock ଜାଗାର ଆଉ ସେଇ rock ଯାକ magnetic rocks ଯାକ iron components ବହୁତ ଥାଏ ଆଉ ସେଇ rock ରୁ ଜଣା ପଡେ ତାର magnetic orientation ଆଉ declination କଣ ଅଛି and the age is also being possible to determine ତେଣୁ age ଆଉ magnetism ଦୁଇଟା ଯାକ ଦେଖିଲା ପରେ ଜଣା ପଡିଲା ଯେ gradually people started geologists started and geophysicists started concluding that this is one of the most active zones of the earth's surface as far as the plate boundary is concerned and the volcanic materials which are coming up in the form of lava are spreading on either side and gradually you will find younger rocks on this these older rocks towards the end and then you will also find the magnetic properties of age of the rocks are also older towards the coast and younger towards the mid-oceanic ridge. ताମାନେ younger rocks formation ଏଠି ହଉଛି ଯାକ gradually ଆକୁ push କରି ରହୁଛି ତାପରେ plates are moving accordingly and the process is continuously going on. This is one of the peculiar characteristic, and the jigs of it, which was initially detected by the William Morris, sorry, this Alfred Wegener, who was profounder of the continental drift theory. His first evidence was that these jigs of it of the continents on the western and eastern side of these two continental blocks uh, become the first evidence to the possibility of a shifting of the coastline from mid-oceanic ridge towards the side. Besides these volcanic islands, mid-oceanic ridge and volcanic islands and transverse ridges, there are a number of basins. Yaku ଛାଡ଼ିଦେଲା ପରେ then you find a large number of trenches, depressions inside this. ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଟିକେ ଆଉ ଟିକେ detail ଯଦି ଯିବା, then if you go into the details, running through the center of the ocean, boundary between the tectonic plates, approximately 1,600 kilometers wide, that particular mid-oceanic ridge, and world's longest mountain range inside the sea. It is volcanically active, constantly creating new ocean floor through the sea floor spreading process. And average depth is about 3,926 meters, approximately I call it as 4,000 meters. And the deepest point is the Puerto Rico Trench. The Puerto Rico Trench, like this is the Puerto Rico group of islets, of part of West Indies. ତାର ଏପଟ ସାଇଡରେ ରହିଛି Puerto Rico Trench. So that is the deepest point of our Atlantic Ocean, with a depth of about 8,380 meters. ଟିକେ average to ଟିକେ କମ୍. It contains multiple deep ocean reaches formed by subduction zones. That is a subduction zone where the plates, continental plates used to subduct inside. Continental shelves depth is less than 250 meter depth, consider about 11% of the ocean floor area. Abyssal plain, there are depth, occasionally say depth of the plains 4,000 to 6,000 meters, and sediments are millions years old. सबुठु पुराना sediments से जगह देखा जाए. And other underwater features are submarine canyons. There is a unique feature, that is submarine canyons, sea mounts, volcanic islands, underwater plateaus and basins. ये जिनिस भी रही. Submarine canyon कौन? So when a river enters into the sea, river जो sediment of पानी जाको माने समुद्र भितर पसिकी जीवो, से जो track रे जीवो, तो गोटे valley create करिकी जीवो on the floor of the sea, and it will be passing towards the continental shelf, and then it will go down the continental slope with a number of gullies type of erosions. So those are called as the submarine canyons. ଯେମିତି ଆମର ମହାନଦୀ ଯାଇଛି ମାନେ ସେ ଭିତରେ ଯୋଉ ଗୋଟେ ମହାନଦୀ କେନିୟନ ତାର ତିଆରି କରିକି ଯାଇଛି ଭିତରୁ ଇନସାଇଡ୍ ମର୍ଜିଂ ଇନସାଇଡ୍ ଦି ସି, ସେମିତି ଆମର ଗଙ୍ଗା ନଦୀ ସେମିତି again getting into the sea, creating a canyon inside Bay of Bengal. Our canyons are the deep depressions which are scored by the river sediments and the river water coming during the high flowing season. ଯେତେବେଳେ force of water ବହୁତ ଥାଏ ସେ ସମୟରେ ପାଣି ଯୋଉ force ରେ ଆସେ, and that creates a valley type of situation inside the ocean floors, passing from the continental shelf going up to the continental slope zone. ये पर्यंत लंबिकी थाए तापरे मर्ज ହେଇଯାଏ ଆଉ ତାପରେ ଦେଖାଯାଏନି depressions or valleys. And those are a kind of feature which are called as submarine canyons, which are there with almost all the major rivers of the Atlantic Ocean. Wherever there are rivers, you will find inside the sea the submarine canyons. Then there are also sea mounts. Sea mounts are ଆମେ ଯେମିତି hillocks and hills ଦେଖୁଛେ, isolated hills and hillocks. Then within the sea also at many places you will find sea mounts which are the representative of the volcanic eruptions of the past. They have remained as conical hills inside the sea. So these are all the sea mounts. That's what there are a large number of volcanic mountains associated with this mid-oceanic ridge and its transverse ridges. ओके अच्छा अदर यूनिक कैरेक्टरिस्टिक वोल्केनिक आइलैंड भितर गोटे एजोर्स आइलैंड अछि जोटा कि स्पेन पाखरे एठी देखिबो एजोर्स आइलैंड ए मानचित्र रे तो ए जिनिस अगर देख पढ़िला बेले जस्ट पाखरे गोटे तम स्कूल एटलास अछि से एटलास रे ओशन रो गोटे गोटे पेज अछि से पेज को धरी बसी देखिबो एई जगह रे रही छि एजोर्स आइलैंड ए जो जिनिस देखुछो एई जगह ले पार्ट ऑफ द एजोर्स आइलैंड वोल्केनिक आइलैंड्स अच्छा एठी जोटा कहउथली तमको जोटी कि नेपोलियन को एक्साइल कराइतला द नेम ऑफ द आइलैंड इज सेंट हेलेना जोटी नेपोलियन को आनी कि एक्साइल कराइतला एई जगह रे सेंट हेलेना आइलैंड दैट इज आल्सो a volcanic island of the past एमती हमर ए मेटेरियल सी भितर बहुत गुडे वोल्केनिक आइलैंड भी रही छि बहुत वोल्केनो रही छि एक्टिव वोल्केनो भी अछि ओल्ड वोल्केनो भी रही छि एक्सट्रीम वोल्केनो भी रही छि आइलैंड्स भी अछि तेणु एमती है कि ग्रेजुअली the unique characteristics ocean widens to the south of the equator there are ocean ro depth মানে extension बहुत बड़ी बड़ी जाउची it is about 5900 kilometers about highest ମାନେ ପାଖାପାଖି 6000 किलोमीटर ହେଇଯାଉଛି within the two edges ଆଉ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ fracture zone intersected with the mid Atlantic ridge ରହିଛି so there are many unique things which are associated with the movement of the plate movement और तार related fracture जाके बहुत गुडे देखा जाए Atlantic Ocean because of this mid Atlantic ridge और तार जो activity पाई activeness in the plate motion तो एटा थिला हमर that is part of the Atlantic Ocean तापर if you go to the Pacific Ocean Pacific Ocean that is one of the largest oceans of the world having an area equal to the area of the moon जोथिपाई बेले बेले आगुरु scientifically astronomers have started saying that probably that is the place from where the moon has been taken out of the earth and the depression has arisen because the size is 15 to the Pacific Ocean almost same to the size. The Pacific Ocean peculiarity la kono if you look at the Pacific tar picture eti nahi देखिए subsequent class रे just देखिए केतबेले Pacific Ocean is something unique in its own characteristic it is the circular pattern of ocean in the northern hemisphere southern hemisphere रे सेमती गोटे wide area रही extension is very large depth is also very high volcanic activities are also most intense earthquake activities are also most intense highest number of trenches oceanic trenches are there highest number of different types of islands are also there ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ରକାର island ମାନେ volcanic islands ଅଛି sea mount and the remnant mountains ଅଛି ତା ଛଡା coral islands ଅଛି so like this there are different types of islands which are there structural islands ଅଛି sedimentation negative islands ଅଛି barrier islands ଅଛି there are many varieties of things are there somewhat interesting part la the entire Pacific Ocean in the northern part is covered surrounded by on the western side and eastern side by the large number of plates sorry large number of trenches जो ट्रेन जाके अछि माने जति हमें बेरिंग सी पाखरु आरंभ करिबा टुवर्ड्स चाइना तले बेरिंग सी पाखरे रही छि क्यूरिल ट्रेन्स ता तळको आसिले लेफ्ट माने वेस्टर्न साइड ऑफ द पैसिफिक रे जापान पाखरे क्यूरिल ट्रेन्स ता तळको आसिला जापानीज ट्रेन्स ता तळको आसिला फिलिपिन्स ट्रेन्स ता तळको आसिला मिंडानाओ ट्रेन्स ता तळको आसिला मिंडानाओ ट्रेन्स पर सेही जगह रे रही छि मेरियानास ट्रेन्स इज देयर विदिन दैट मिंडानाओ ट्रेन्स भितरे अब तापर जदि ईस्टर्न साइड टू देखिबा ताले କ୍ୟୁରିଲ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚଟା ଆଲାସ୍କା ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଏକ୍ସଟେଣ୍ଡ କରିଛି, ତାପରେ ରହିଛି କାଲିଫର୍ଣ୍ଣିଆ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍চ। And California trench is a very interesting trench, the plate motion is horizontal. California रे वर्तमान सुधा भी active plate motion is being seen across the globe. Globe रो वर्तमान सबुठु दुटा जगह रे वर्तमान देखा होची plate motion रो activeness. गोटे along the California coast, आगोटे along the east coast of Africa. Africa रे कोन हेची वर्तमान very recently things has been जोटे हमर लेक नायका, लेक टांगानाइका, लेक विक्टोरिया, लेक एरी एमती तो गोटे लाइन ऑफ लेक्स अच्छी, से लाइन लेक रो टिके तळको साउथ रे a crack has developed which is extending about 60 to 70 kilometers and a width of about 15 meters. Depth ro gote what we can call it as depression, or it may call it as a rift valley. Say type ro gote fracture ହେଇକି and the land is showing a dissociation, desegregation ହେଲା ଭଳିଆ ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି, and ସେଇଟାକୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ believe କରାଯାଉଛି that that is also another part of the drifting process where the Africa is going to be again broken into two pieces. Then the eastern part ଟା କ'ଣ ହବ, ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ସେ plate ଟା gradually move କରିବ towards India and they are likely to ଯଦି move କରିବା ଆରମ୍ଭ କରେ along with Madagascar Republic ଯୋଉଟା ଅଛି ସେଇଟା plus ଏ portion ର ଯୋଉ crust ଅଛି ଯୋଉଠୁ ଆଫ୍ରିକାର ଖଣ୍ଡେ ଭାଗିବ, ଏ ସବୁ ଯାକ ମିଶିକି ଯାଇକି ଆମର ଇଣ୍ଡିଆର ଇଷ୍ଟ କୋଷ୍ଟ ରେ ଯାଇ ୱେଷ୍ଟ କୋଷ୍ଟ ରେ ଯାଇକି ଲାଗିବେ, and India's dimension will change and Arabian Sea will dimension will change and there will be many geographic configurations which are unique. ଏମିତି ଗୋଟେ ହବାର chance future ରେ ରହିଛି ବୋଲି this is what the prediction of the geologists, because the way the Africa's developments are taking place. Similarly, Africa, ଆମର California coast ରେ ଯୋଉ ରହିଛି trench, California trench, that is a transverse trench, ଯୋଉଟା କି these plates of the North American plate and the Pacific plate, ଏ ଦିଟା ଯାକ they are sliding past each other. ଗୋଟେ north ଆଡକୁ ଯାଉଛି, ଗୋଟେ south ଆଡକୁ ଯାଉଛି horizontally. They do not diverge into the trench. ସେଇ trench ପାଖରେ, California trench ପାଖରେ there is a parallel movement. One is going towards north, other one is sliding towards south. ତେଣୁ ଆକୁ କୁହାଯାଉଛି ଆମର transverse fault type ର। ତେଣୁ ଆମର ତିନି ପ୍ରକାର ଯୋଉ fault boundary ଅଛି, the continental drift and the plate tectonic process, ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା convergent boundary, ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା divergent boundary, ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା transform boundary. The transform boundary ଯୋଉଟା କି parallelly slide, they are sliding past each other. ଘଷି ହେଇକି ଦି ଜାଗ ଯାଉଛି. So this is what is the uniqueness of the Pacific Ocean. ତେଣୁ Pacific Ocean ର ଏଇଟା ଗୋଟେ uniqueness ରହିଛି। ଆଚ୍ଛା, if you go to general configuration, what about the continental shelf? Continental shelves are extremely narrow. କାହିଁକି ନା କୂଳରେ ଯଦି trench ରହିଲା ତାହେଲେ continental shelf କେମିତି ହବ? ହେଇପାରିବନି। So the extension of the continental shelf is very narrow, ବହୁତ narrow, very close to the sea. Immediately following the close to the sea, there are trenches. ତେଣୁ trench ରହିବା ଯୋଗୁଁ continental shelf ବହୁତ wide ନୁହଁ, and the depth of the ocean is very high in comparison to Indian and Atlantic Ocean. ତାପରେ continental shelf on the east coast of Pacific. East coast of Pacific ମାନେ Pacific east coast କୋଉଟା, ଯୋଉ California side, Alaska side, ତାପରେ South America ଯୋଉ western side ସେଟା ହଉଛି Pacific Ocean ର eastern side. ତାର Pacific Ocean ର eastern side ରେ north ରେ ରହିଛି ତ North America, south ରେ north ରେ ରହିଛି east side ରେ South America, western side ରେ ରହିଛି China and Japan, ଆଉ south ମାନେ central portion ରେ ରହିଛି ଯୋଉ Philippines island, ତାପରେ ଗୋଟେ Melanesia, Micronesia and Melanesia, ଏମିତି ତିନିଟା group of islands ରହିଛି, ସେଥିରେ ଯାହା Celebes, ତାପରେ ଟୋଙ୍ଗା, ଏମିତି ବହୁତ ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ରହିଛି ତା ଭିତରେ, ଇନକ୍ଲୁଡିଂ ଫିଜି, ଏସବୁ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ମଝିରେ ରହିଛି ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରାଲ ଆମେରିକା, ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରାଲ ପାସିଫିକ ଓସେନ ଭିତରେ। ତ ନର୍ଦର୍ନ ପାର୍ଟରେ ଆମର ଯୋଉ ରହିଛି ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ଗୁଡାଏ ରହିଛି, ସୋ ମୋଷ୍ଟ ଅଫ ଦ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚେସ୍ ଆର୍ ଆସୋସିଏଟେଡ ୱିଥ ଭଲକାନିକ ଇରପ୍ସନ। କ'ଣ ହଉଛି ନା ଦି କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ପ୍ଲେଟ, ଏସିଆଟିକ ପ୍ଲେଟ କ'ଣ ହଉଛି ଗ୍ରାଜୁଆଲି ସେଇ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ଭିତରକୁ ସବମର୍ଜ ହଉଛି, and the trench is taking away the continental plates inside. inside ଯେତେବେଳେ continental plate ଯାକ merge କରୁଛି ସେଇ trench ଭିତରୁ, it gradually going into the deeper part of the trench, heat ବଢୁଛି, ତାପରେ pressure ହବା ଯୋଗୁ volcanic eruption ବହୁତ ଜାଗାରେ crack ହେଇକି volcanic eruption ହଉଛି, ବହୁତ ଜାଗାରେ heat ହେଇକି ଏ ଜାଗା melt ହେଇକି ବି volcanic lava formation ହେଇକି they are also erupting. And this is a process which is going on along the west coast of the Pacific Ocean across the borders of China and Japan. ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଜିନିଷ ହେବା ଯୋଗୁ there is a constantly there are at many places there have been volcanic eruptions and both on the eastern side and western side of the northern Pacific Ocean. ତେଣୁ Pacific Ocean ର ଚାରିକଡ଼ରେ ଯୋଉ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ଯାକ ରହିଛି ସେ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ରହିବା ଯୋଗୁ ତାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ it is a ring of fire ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଉଛି କାରଣ ସେ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ କଡ଼ରେ volcanic eruptions ରହିଛି। ଆଉ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ କଡ଼ରେ କ'ଣ ରହିଛି ଯୋଉ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଜାଗା ରହିଛି ଗୋଟେ ଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ମାସ୍ ଯେତେବେଳେ ସବମର୍ଜ ହଉଛି କିଛି ଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ମାସ୍ ରହିଯାଉଛି ଯୋଉ ଯାକ ଉପରେ they are remaining as the islands island arcs island arc ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ଗୁଡାଏ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଗୋଟେ ଆର୍କ ସେପରେ ଖଞ୍ଜି ହେଇକି ରହିଲା ଭଳିଆ ରହିଛି ତାକୁ ସେଥିପାଇଁ କୁହାଯାଏ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଆର୍କସ୍ ବୋଲି ବା ଆର୍କିପେଲାଗୋ group of islands together Japanese archipelago Philippines archipelago ଏମିତି କୁହାଯାଏ। there are a number of islands which are associated with the trenches ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ପ୍ରକାର characteristics ଏଇଠି ବେଶୀ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳେ ଯୋଉଟା କି ଅନ୍ୟ ଓସେନ ମାନଙ୍କରେ ଟିକେ କମ ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକରେ ବିଲକୁଲ ନାହିଁ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆରେ occasionally କାଁ ଭାଁ ଅଛି but in Pacific this is unique so along the trenches you will find the deep sea floor as well as simultaneously you will find a series of volcanic hills uh, which are mostly now exhibited as the islands or archipelagos, a series of islands. The northern portion of the Pacific is attached to the or linked to the northern sea through the Bering Strait. କିନ୍ତୁ northern portion ଟା ଆମର totally block ହେଇକି ଥାଏ almost କାରଣ Bering Sea portion ଟା ବହୁତ ଛୋଟ narrow for connecting the water from the cold zone of the northern ocean to the Pacific. Then Pacific northern temperature is relatively warmer than the Atlantic Ocean. Atlantic Ocean is ଯେତିକି ଥଣ୍ଡା the ocean water and the ocean surface temperature is low whereas in the Pacific Ocean the surface temperature is high ଦୁଇଟା କାରଣ କ'ଣ ଥଣ୍ଡା ପାଣି ବେଶୀ ମିଶୁନି ତାପରେ because of the volcanic eruptions ଗରମ ପାଣି ଆଉ ଗରମ ବହୁତ ମିଶିବା ଯୋଗୁ ପାଣିର warmthness ଅଧିକା ରହୁଛି so this is what is a peculiarity of this Pacific Ocean in terms of the heat content and the temperature distribution in relation to these type of activities going on. A central part of the northern Pacific रे रहिଛି ଆମର ଗୋଟେ ବଡ଼ major mountain system volcanic mountain system that is called Hawaiian mountain Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea ଦିଟା volcanic peak ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ huge volcanic submerged hill ସେ submerged hill ର ଉପରଟା ହଉଛି Hawaiian island ଆଉ ତାର base ଟା ଯାଇକି ଗୋଟେ hill ଭଳିଆ ହେଇକି conical hill ଭଳିଆ ହେଇକି ସେ ଯେ ground ରେ volcanic eruption ହେଇକି ଆସ୍ତେ ଆସ୍ତେ ଉଠି ଉଠିକି material it has come above the sea and now that is the place which we call it as Hawaii. Having two major mountain volcanic peaks, Mauna Lea and Mauna Kea. These are the two active volcanoes. Occasionally they are erupting gases and lava. ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ହେଲା ଆମର ନର୍ଦର୍ନ ପେସିଫିକର କ୍ୟାରେକ୍ଟରିଷ୍ଟିକ୍ସ ଆଉ ଇନସାଇଡ୍ ଦି ocean the continental slope is also narrow continental shelf is narrow and the entire Pacific Ocean in the northern part is a completely deep basin area without any segregation because there is no central hill system inside the Pacific. Northern Pacific ଭିତରେ ଏମିତି ଆମର mid Atlantic ridge ଯେମିତି ଅଛି ସେମିତି କିଛି ଜିନିଷ ନାହିଁ submerged mountain ନାହିଁ except that Hawaiian island. Then the entire area is a very deep area with a depth of about 5 to 6 kilometers on an average. ତାପରେ coming to the south କୁ ଆସିଲେ the southern part of the Pacific Ocean southern part ରେ କ'ଣ ରହିଛି southern part ର Pacific Ocean ର eastern side ରେ ରହିଛି South America ଆଉ ତା side ରେ ରହିଛି ଆମର Chilean Trench and the Andes Trench. Chile Trench and Andes Trench ଏ ଦିଟା ଯାକ ରହିଛି on the border between the Pacific Ocean and the South America west coast. ତେଣୁ ସେଇ ଜାଗାରେ ରହିବା ଯୋଗୁ that is also again a narrow continental shelf ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ବି ନାହିଁ। ଏପଟ ସାଇଡରେ ଯଦି ଦେଖିବା if you look on this side ମାନେ Atlantic Ocean Pacific Ocean ର western side ରେ ରହିଲା କଣ except ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆ ରହିଲା ଗୋଟେ ମାତ୍ର ଆଉ କିଛି ନାହିଁ। and there are central islands କିଛିଟା ରହିଛି south ରେ equator ର south ରେ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆ ଅଛି that is you can see and simultaneously ରହିଛି towards western side some of the central European Pacific islands. ତେଣୁ ଏଠି କଣ ହେଇଛି ନା gradually on the east coast of Australia or the west coast of the Pacific in the South Pacific Ocean, lot of volcanic submerged plateaus are there. ଯାହାର ନାଁ ହେଲା ଗୁୟତ୍ସ ତାକୁ କହନ୍ତି ଗୁୟତ୍ସ ବୋଲି। That is a unique feature of the Pacific. Volcanic eruption ହେଇଛି ବହୁତ ମାତ୍ରାରେ ସେ ଜାଗା distribute ହେଇଯାଇଛି is spreaded over the ocean floor in the form of plateaus. ତେଣୁ ଗୋଟେ submerged plateau ର ମାନେ manifestation ସେଇଠୁ ମିଳୁଛି that is inside the Pacific Ocean in the southern side and those are called as the volcanic guyots. G-U-Y-O-T-S guyots. ତେଣୁ ସିଏ ହେଲା ଗୋଟେ peculiar feature of the Pacific Ocean. ଆଚ୍ଛା ତାକୁ ଛାଡ଼ିଦେଲା ପରେ if you look at the trenches ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତ ରହିଛି ଯେମିତି କହିଲି କ୍ୟୁରିଲ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତାପରେ ଜାପାନିଜ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତାପରେ ରହିଲା ଫିଲିପିନ୍ସ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତାପରେ ରହିଲା ମେରିଆନାସ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତାପରେ ରହିଲା ଟୋଙ୍ଗା ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତାପରେ ରହିଲା କାଲିଫର୍ଣ୍ଣିଆ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତାପରେ ରହିଲା ଏପଟେ ଆଣ୍ଡିଜ ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ତାପରେ ରହିଲା ଚିଲି ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଜ ଏମିତି ହେଇକି ଏଣ୍ଟାୟାର Pacific is surrounded by a large number of trenches indicating active plate boundaries, subduction zones. So that is the peculiarity of the Pacific Ocean. ଆଚ୍ଛା ତା ଭିତରେ ଆଉ ରହିଛି କଣ ଯୋଉ ଗୁୟତ୍ସ and sea mounts. Sea mount ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ରହିଛି, underwater mountains ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ରହିଛି. Those are formed of the volcanic eruption. And ଯେମିତି ଆମର Hawaii island is a part of the submerged volcanic hill emerging above the water surface of the island. Achha, what about these other features? Other features includes a large number of varieties of islands are there, which is also unique to the Pacific. Pacific रे ଆମେ ଯେତେ Atlantic ରେ ଯେମିତି ଦେଖୁଛେ volcanic island ବହୁତ ଅଛି ଆଉ ବେଶୀ କିଛି ridge islands ବହୁତ କମ ଅଛି କିନ୍ତୁ Pacific Ocean ରେ there are 3-4 categories of islands. କିଛି ରହିଛି volcanic islands, କିଛି ରହିଛି submerged ridge islands, କିଛି ରହିଛି coral islands ଆଉ କିଛି ରହିଛି barrier islands. Empty there are 4 different kind of islands are there. ଆଚ୍ଛା ତା ଭିତରେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ uniqueness ରହିଲା ଏଇ island ଭିତରୁ there are 3 different type of racial groups are residing in these islands. Many of these are small islands distributed across the Pacific. ଏ ଛୋटे ଛୋଟେ island ଭିତରେ ଯେମିତି ଆମେ କହୁଛେ ବାଲି ଦ୍ୱୀପ ଯେମିତି କୁହାଯାଉଛି ବାଲି island, Indonesian islands ତାଠୁ ଆହୁରି ବହୁତ ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ Indonesia island ତ ହେଲା there are 500 islands together in Indonesia. ବଡ଼ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡଟା ସବୁଠୁ ଯୋଉ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଭିତରେ ରହିଛି ଜାକର୍ତ୍ତା ଇଜ ଦି କ୍ୟାପିଟାଲ। ତେଣୁ ସେମିତି ଆମେ ଆଉ ଟିକେ ସିଆଡ଼କୁ ଗଲେ ସେମିତି ପାଉଛେ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ରହିଛି। ସେଲଭିସ୍ ଗ୍ରୁପ ଅଫ୍ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡସ୍, ଦ ଫିଜି ଗ୍ରୁପ ଅଫ୍ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡସ୍, ସେମିତି 3ଟା ଡିଫରେଣ୍ଟ ରେସିଆଲ ଟ୍ରେଡ୍ସର ଲୋକମାନେ ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ଅଛନ୍ତି। ତେଣୁ ସେଇ ଅନୁସାରେ ସେ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଯାକର ନମେନକ୍ଲେଚର କରାହେଇଛି। ପଲିନେସିଆନ ଗ୍ରୁପ ଅଫ୍ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡସ୍, ମାଇକ୍ରୋନେସିଆନ ଗ୍ରୁପ ଅଫ୍ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡସ୍, Melanesian group of islands. ସେମିତି 3ଟା group of islands ରେ 3ଟା different racial characteristics ର ଲୋକ ଦେଖାଯାଆନ୍ତି Pacific Ocean ରେ। So that is what is ନା ଶୁଣିଥିବ Marshall Island, that is also one of the Melanesian island group. ଲୋକ ଯାକ ପୁରା ଚିକଣ କଳା ଯୋଉ କୁହନ୍ତି ପୁରା black. ସେମିତି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଯୋଉ racial characteristics ର difference ଅନୁସାରେ they are different racial groups with racial traits are different. Their heads are different, their body color and tone, their eye color, body stature. ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ଜିନିଷ ମାନେ racial characteristics ରେ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ difference ଦେଖାଯାଏ. So you find different including also a large number of because the temperature is relatively high in the Pacific Ocean, we find a large number of coral islands also. And of this large number of coral islands, the uh, largest coral island group are found along the east coast of Australia, that is known as the Great Barrier Reef, which is extending about 1200 kilometers. 1200 କିଲୋମିଟର ଲମ୍ବାର ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଅଛି ଯୋଉ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଟା କି ଫର୍ମ ବାଇ ଦି ଡିପୋଜିସନ ଅଫ ଦି କୋରାଲ୍ସ କୋରାଲ ଯାକ କଣ ହୁଏ କୋରାଲ ଯାକ these are small polyps surrounded by the limestone cells ଗୋଟେ ଟାଇପର କୀଟ ଯାର କୀଟର ଚାରିପଟେ ଗୋଟେ ଲାଇମଷ୍ଟୋନ ସେଲ ତିଆରି ହେଇଯାଏ ଆଉ ସେ ଲାଇମଷ୍ଟୋନ ସେଲ ଭିତରେ ସେ କୀଟ ଯାକ ରହନ୍ତି ଆଉ they try to extract food from the phytoplankton ବାକି ଯାହା ଖାଦ୍ୟ ଖାଇକି ସେ gradually ବଢନ୍ତି these corals are of different size different form different color different texture ବିଭିନ୍ନ ପ୍ରକାର ଅଛି କୋଉ କୋରାଲଟା ଗଛ ଭଳିଆ ବଢୁଥିବ କୋଉ କୋରାଲଟା ଫ୍ଲାଟ ହେଇକି ମାନେ ଶଙ୍ଖ ଭଳିଆ ବଢୁଥିବ ତ କିଏ ଫ୍ଲାଟ ଭଳିଆ ପେଟି ଭଳିଆ ବଢୁଥିବ ତ ଇଟ୍ ଡିପେଣ୍ଡସ୍ ଅନ୍ ତାପରେ ଭାଙ୍ଗିକି ଯେତେବେଳେ ସମୁଦ୍ର ପତନରେ ପଡିବ ତାପରେ ଗ୍ରାଜୁଆଲି ସେ ଜାଗା ଉଚ୍ଚା ହେଇଯିବ ତାପରେ ପୁଣି ନୂଆ କୋରାଲ ତିଆରି ହେବେ ନୂଆ କୋରାଲ ପୁଣି ଷ୍ଟାର୍ଟ କରିବେ ଗ୍ରୋଇଂ ସିଏ ପୁଣି ଯେତେବେଳେ ଢେଉ ହବ କି କଣ ଗୋଟେ ଆସିବ ତାପରେ ଭାଙ୍ଗିବ ଏମିତି ହେଇକି ଗ୍ରାଜୁଆଲି these islands have been created and that is one of the unique diversity biodiversity hot places of the ocean କାରଣ କୋରାଲ ଯୋଉଠି ବେଶୀ ରହେ ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ଫିଶଙ୍କର accumulation ବେଶୀ ହୁଏ fish accumulation ବେଶୀ ହେଲେ other species ବି ଆସନ୍ତି so the highest biodiversity inside the oceans are mostly found along the coral reefs ତେଣୁ coral reef is also is an indicator of our global climate change ଯଦି coral reef ର ଯଦି bleaching ହେଲା ସେ ଜାଗା ତ limestone cell limestone ଜାଗା ଯଦି ପାଣିର ଗରମ ଯୋଗୁ ହଉ କି ପାଣିର ଏସିଡିଟି ଯୋଗୁ ହଉ ଯଦି କିଛି ଖରାପ ହଉଛି ତାମାନେ ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ ଏନ୍ ଇଣ୍ଡିକେସନ ଅଫ ଦି ପଲ୍ୟୁସନ ଅଫ ସି ୱାଟର ତେଣୁ ଏଇଟାକୁ ଗୋଟେ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ହ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ପଲ୍ୟୁସନ ର ଇମ୍ପାକ୍ଟ ବୋଲି ଧରାଯାଏ and you find the largest varieties of colored fishes and various other sea dwelling creatures ତେଣୁ that is unique for this Pacific Ocean Central Pacific ରେ ଯୋଉ ମାର୍ଶାଲ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଠୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିକି ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ଅଛି ସେ ଜାଗା ବି ସବୁ କୋରାଲ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡସ୍ ବହୁତ ରହିଛି there are many coral islands the coral reef type of islands or atoll type of islands atoll ଟା ହେଲା ଗୋଟେ circular island reef ହେଲା ଗୋଟେ barrier type ର ଗୋଟେ କାନ୍ଥ type ର ridge type ର island ଏମିତି ହେଇକି you find a variety of coral islands so inside the Pacific Ocean we find four different categories of islands coral islands are there volcanic islands are there submerged mountain sea mounts and the submerged ridges and plateaus are there and also there are barrier islands are also there ଏମିତି ଚାରି ପାଞ୍ଚଟା category ରହିଛି and there are also many active volcanic places around the volcanic around the Pacific Ocean ତେଣୁ unique feature ହେଲା this is what is our Pacific Ocean's unique feature mid oceanic ridge ନାହିଁ Pacific Ocean ରେ କିନ୍ତୁ South Pacific Ocean ରେ there are plateaus which are extending from South America ଠୁ extend କରି ଆସିକି ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଲମ୍ବିଛି ସେଟା କୁହନ୍ତି East Pacific Rise is a significant feature in the South Pacific Ocean ମାନେ ସେ ପାହାଡ ଭଳିଆ ନୁହଁ it is like a plateau but extending from the South American coast ଠାରୁ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆ କୋଷ୍ଟ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ଲମ୍ବିଛି so the East Pacific Rise ବୋଲି ତାକୁ କୁହାହଉଛି part of the global mid oceanic ridge system ତାକୁ mid oceanic ridge system ର ଗୋଟେ part ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ but they are not truly at the mid location and rather it is a tangential location from South America towards Australia କିନ୍ତୁ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ଟେକ୍ଟୋନିକ ପ୍ଲେଟ ର ଡାଇଭରଜେନ୍ସ ରେ ମାଗମାର eruption and deposition ରେ formation ହେଇଛି and oceanic plateaus ରହିଛି ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ underwater abyssal plains are also there volcanic activities are there ତେଣୁ Pacific Ocean it is lack of there is mid oceanic ridge like Atlantic or Indian Ocean Indian now Atlantic ରେ mid oceanic ridge ଅଛି କିନ୍ତୁ Pacific ରେ ନାହିଁ and the oldest known ocean floor section is approximately 180 million years old ocean floor ର year the formation of the Pacific Ocean And most of the ocean floor's bottom topography of the Pacific is shaped by the tectonic activities, volcanic activities, earthquake activities, including subduction zones, volcanic hotspots, plate motion areas, and then plate areas of submergence and subduction, and geologically active and dynamic underwater topography we find in the Pacific Ocean. So that is what is the uniqueness of Pacific. We are supposed to know something more about in terms of the names. How to get it to the ଅଧିକା ଜାଣିବ ଭଲ ହବ. Then we are coming to the Indian Ocean. Indian Ocean characteristics କ'ଣ? What are the characteristics? Indian Ocean is mostly extending in the southern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere Indian Ocean presence ବିଶେଷ felt କରି ହୁଏନି. The part of the Indian Ocean which is exhibited in the northern part of the globe is the Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, and this Red Sea and Gulf of Oman, and then sea जो area टा रही ଟିକେ Middle East ର ସେଇତକ that much of water area of the oceans are in the northern hemisphere, like the rest of the entire Indian Ocean remains in the southern hemisphere. And the complex and diverse bottom topography କାରଣ ୟାର topography ପୁଣି ଏଇ ଦିଟାଠୁ ଅଲଗା. It is different from the Pacific, it is different from the Atlantic. Average ocean depth is about 3,700 meters. Average depth. And maximum depth is about 7,200 meters at Sundar Range. Sundar Range ହେଲା କୋଉଠି? Malaya Peninsula ର side ରେ. Malaya Peninsula ର western side ରେ. Sundar Range ଯୋଉଠୁ କି ଆମର 2004 tsunami start ହେଇଥିଲା. So that is the deepest part of the Indian Ocean. And ସବୁ ocean ଭିତରେ ଏଇଟାର this is one of the youngest oceans which has been formed at the end. ଆଗ Atlantic formation ହେଇଯାଇଛି, ତାପରେ Pacific formation ହେଇଯାଇଛି, ତାପରେ ପରେ Indian Ocean formation ହେଇଛି with India shifting towards northeast, coming against the Eurasian plate. Major topographic features ଭିତରେ ରହୁଛି, there are quite a large number of mid-oceanic ridges are there in the Indian Ocean. ଆମର ଯୋଉ Cape Comorin ଠାରୁ ତଳକୁ ଗଲେ gradually you find a ridge, mid-oceanic ridge. At the central part of this mid-oceanic ridge is located the most important geostrategic island, that is Diego Garcia Island. ଯାହାକୁ ମାନେ ବହୁତ ସମୟରେ ଆମର conflict zone ଭିତରେ ଥିଲା. Because Diego Garcia is a place, the island located in the central Indian Ocean. ଯାହାକୁ ଯଦି ଗୋଟେ army base କରାଯାଉଛି ବା ଗୋଟେ military base କରାଯାଉଛି, so that island is having a command over the entire Indian Ocean and its surrounding nations. ତାର ଚାରି କଡ଼ରେ ରହିଲା ସମୁଦ୍ର, ଏ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡଟା ରହିଲା ମଝିରେ, ସାଉଥ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଓସେନର ମଝିରେ ରହିଲା ପାଖାପାଖି ନର୍ଦର୍ନ ମିଡଲ ପାର୍ଟ, ପୁରା ସାଉଥ ନୁହଁ, ନର୍ଦର୍ନ ମିଡଲ ପାର୍ଟରେ ରହୁଛି ଟୁ ଦି ସାଉଥ ଅଫ୍ ଆୱାର କେପ୍ କେମୋରିନ୍. କିନ୍ତୁ ସେଇ ଜାଗାରୁ there is absolute ମାନେ control by military activities. କାରଣ ମିଡଲ ଅଫ୍ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଓସେନରେ ରହିବା ଯୋଗୁଁ, କାହିଁକିନା ଆମର ଯେତେ ସି ଫେୟାରିଂ ଟ୍ରେଡିଂ ଆକ୍ଟିଭିଟିଜ ସବୁ ହୁଏ between the west and the east, ସବୁ ଜାକ ସେଇପଟେ ଦେଇକି ଯାଏ. Then this becomes one of the central military hub where they can have a command over the entire nations. ଯେତେ ତାର ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଓସେନର ବର୍ଡରିଂ ନେସନ ଅଛି, ଏପଟେ ସାଉଥ ଆଫ୍ରିକା ଠାରୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରି ଇଥିଓପିଆ ଠୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରି ଏପଟେ ସାଉଥ ଆରବ ଠୁ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରି ତାପରେ ଓମାନ, ତାପରେ ଇରାକ, ତାପରେ ଏପଟେ ତାପରେ ପାକିସ୍ତାନ, ତାପରେ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆ, ତାପରେ ପରେ ଏପଟୁ ଆସିଲା ପରେ ରହିଲା ଆମର ସିଙ୍ଗାପୁର and then Malay Peninsula, ତାପରେ Indonesian island, ତାପରେ Malaysian island, ତାପରେ ଲାଷ୍ଟକୁ ରହିଲା ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆ on the eastern side. ଏ ସବୁ ଯାକ ସରାଉଣ୍ଡ ହେଇକି ରହିଛି, so that becomes a very strategic place for military command over the Indian Ocean. ତେଣୁ ସେଠି ରହିଲେ there is a military advantage for that. That is why there has been a conflict between the India and many other nations of going to establish military centers. But there has been understanding. There is a mutual understanding. They have created these alliance groups and they have placed their armies to see ये जो हमारा ट्रेडिंग बेले जो रबरी होची और विभिन्न प्रकार पायरेटिंग होची से जाके सब कंट्रोल करिया पे देयर हैज बीन security has been strengthened in those places. Military security has been strengthened, but that is a strategic location. अच्छा इंडियन ओशन रो जेहेतु नॉर्दर्न पार्ट रे नाही ओनली बे ऑफ बंगाल अरेबियन सी रहउछि द टू मेजर एरियाज तेणु आमर वेस्टर्न साइड ऑफ द इंडियन ओशन इज आल्सो आमर जो बे अरेबियन सी रो वेस्टर्न साइड दैट इज आल्सो ए फॉल्ट गाइडेड साइड काहे कि इंडिया जेतोले आसी अफ्रीका पाखरु सेपरेट हे कि there has been a fault and from the fault the Indian mass has started moving towards northeast. ତେଣୁ ଆମର western coast ରେ ସେଥିପାଇଁ ରହିଛି it is a coast which is deep from the land. That means the coastline is a narrow line and beyond the coastline you find the depth of the sea is very high immediately. You don't find a beach and then extending into a shallow zone where you can go for a bath. You will get into 200 feet water depth the moment you are coming down from the land to the sea. So there are occasional places where the beach development has taken place because of the mountains which are along the coast. Coast ରେ ଯଦି କିଛିଟା mountain ରହିଛି ଯେମିତି ଆମର ଯୋଉଠି ଗୋଆରେ ରହିଛି ତାପରେ କେରଳରେ ରହିଛି parts of କର୍ଣ୍ଣାଟକରେ କୋଉଠି କୋଉଠି ରହିଛି ବାଙ୍ଗାଲୋରରେ ରହିଛି ଏପଟେ ଦାଦରା ନଗର ହାବେଳି ସେଇଠି ରହିଛି ଏପଟେ ଗୁଜରାଟ କୋଷ୍ଟରେ ଟିକେ ଟିକେ ରହିଛି ଯୋଉଠି ଯୋଉଠି ରହିଛି ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ which are on the coast ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ଟିକେ ଟିକେ small beach development ହେଇଛି otherwise the coastline is entirely rocky and the coast is very steep. If you go to uh, Cochin, you can understand that how the seas and the land is different from each other. ଆମର ଯେମିତି ପୁରୀ ପାଖରେ ଗୋପାଳପୁର ପାଖରେ you can walk inside the sea. There is no scope of walking inside the sea at every place in the west coast. That is the reason for which there is a crack from which the India has got separated from the African landmass. So the steepness of the slope is existing along the west coast. So this is a peculiarity. So we don't have extensive continental shelves. The continental shelves are relatively narrow in both Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea. Into our Arabian Sea is a steep coast, but Bay of Bengal side is relatively a shallow coast and a prograding coast. Because large number of rivers are coming and joining to the Bay of Bengal, bringing their sediments into the sea, forming the deltas. And this process delta formation sediment deposition the beach development is taking place, and that is the reason for which you find extensive beaches along the east coast, including the highest beach of Marina, and then we have Golden Beach of Puri, Gopalpur, and many other places along the east coast where you find beaches. So continental shelf is narrow, continental slope is also accordingly not very wide. Deep sea plains are there, and deep sea plains are segregated by the mid-oceanic ridges. And mid-oceanic ridges is not the only ridge. Mid-oceanic ridge amara mid-oceanic ridge Indian Ocean bhitare gotiye boli no there are many ridges of channeling in different directions. गोटे जाइछि गोटे रीच जाइछि हमर अंटार्कटिका पाखरु आरंभ करी अल्बाट्रस प्लेट्यू बोले ताकू कहउछि अंटार्कटिका पाखरु वेस्ट माने वेस्ट कोस्ट ऑफ ऑस्ट्रेलिया आ अंटार्कटिका सी पाखा पाखी बाहरी सेंट्रल इंडियन ओशन देके आसी एपटे साउदी अरब पर्यंत जाइछि इथियोपिया पर्यंत आसी सबमर्ज्ड माउंटेन there is another submerged mountain inside which is coming towards Ethiopia and Madagascar. Therefore, there is another important submerged plateau inside the Indian Ocean which is extending up to South Africa. एमती है कि from the central there is a central ridge as well as there are lateral ridges also. Our Indian Ocean bhitere we find more we don't have much of volcanic eruption. These are old volcanic mountains. Active volcanic mountain बहुत कम अच्छी except like our barren island in Andaman. ଛାଡ଼ିଦେଲେ ବାକି ବହୁତ ଜାଗାରେ ଆମର ନାହିଁ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ ଓସେନ ର ଏପଟ ସାଇଡରେ ରହିଛି କିଛିଟା ଆର୍ଥକ୍ୱେକ୍ ଜୋନ୍ସ ଆଉ ସୁନ୍ଦର ଟ୍ରେନ୍ସ ଆଉ ତାପରେ ଇଷ୍ଟ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆନ ଟ୍ରେନ୍ସ ଏଇ ଜାଗା ରହିଛି ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆ କୋଷ୍ଟରେ ତାପରେ ଏପଟେ ରହିଛି ଆଫ୍ରିକା କୋଷ୍ଟରେ ରହିଛି ଅଗଲାସ ଟ୍ରେନ୍ସ ଏମିତି ଅଳ୍ପ କିଛିଟା ରହିଛି, not much, but they are relatively lesser in depth. ତେଣୁ ଆମର ଯଦି ବେସିନ୍ ହିସାବରେ ଦେଖିବା, ଆରବିଆନ୍ ସି ବେସିନ୍, ତାପରେ ସୋମାଲିଆ ବେସିନ୍, ମୋଜାମ୍ବିକ୍ ବେସିନ୍, ସେଣ୍ଟ୍ରାଲ ଇଣ୍ଡିଆନ୍ ବେସିନ୍, depths typically vary from 4,000 to 5,000 meters depending on that. Oceanic trenches ରହିଛି, ତା ଭିତରେ ଜାଭା ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ, ସୁନ୍ଦା ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ, the deepest point of the Indian Ocean. ସେ ଏକା ଜିନିଷ, ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ଜାଭା କୁହାଯାଉଛି ଜାଭା ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ, ସେଇଟାକୁ ହିଁ ସୁନ୍ଦା ଟ୍ରେଞ୍ଚ ବୋଲି କୁହାଯାଏ. Provide significant vertical relief to the ocean floor. यूनिक जियोलॉजिकल फीचर है हमर 90 ईस्ट रीज बोली गोटे रही जोटा कि बे ऑफ बंगाल रे रही व्हिच इज एन एक्सटेंशन ऑफ द हिमालयन माउंटेन सिस्टम इनटू द बे ऑफ बंगाल जोटा सबमर्ज हे कि रही 90 ईस्ट रीज ता देरे रही हमर अंडमान निकोबार ग्रुप ऑफ आइलैंड्स जो कि एक्सपोज हे बाहर को दैट इज द अंडमान निकोबार आइलैंड ग्रुप linear volcanic peaks and sea mounts एमती हे कि रही जियोलॉजी इज रिलेटिवली मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स इन इंडियन ओशन कहीं ना एठी commonality nahi between the Indian Ocean with the Atlantic and the Pacific. They are different from each other. Extinct submarine volcanoes रही बहुत गुटे old volcanoes रही active volcanoes बहुत कम अच्छी तापर सबमरीन कॉन्टिनेंटल राइज माने जो एक प्लेट्यू भलिया कि रही सबमर्ज प्लेट्यू बेसी अच्छी इंडियन ओशन इन कंपैरिजन टू अदर ओशंस ଆମର जो आइलैंड्स ग्रुप रही ग्रुप ऑफ आइलैंड्स भितर हमर बे ऑफ बंगाल दैट इज अ पार्ट ऑफ इंडियन ओशन बे ऑफ बंगाल रही अंडमान निकोबार ग्रुप ऑफ आइलैंड्स अरेबियन सी रे रही हमर लैकेडिव एंड मालदीव लैकेडिव एंड मिनिकॉय आइलैंड्स ता तळकु रही मालदीव आइलैंड्स ता तळकु रही हमर सिलोन ता तळकु रही हमर सिचेलेस आइलैंड ता तळकु रही हमर डिगो गार्सिया आइलैंड ता तळकु रही माडागास्कर आइलैंड एमती देयर आर मेनी आइलैंड्स व्हिच आर देयर इनसाइड द इंडियन ओशन अच्छा त्या भितर कौन सी गोटे जगह देखिए इफ यू लुक एट त्या भितर हमर बॉम्बे पाखरे कॉन्टिनेंटल शेल्फ इज रिलेटिवली वाइडर along the west coast ସେଇଠି ଟିକେ wider continental shelf ଅଛି ଆଉ ସେଇ shelf zone ରୁ ଆମର oil extraction ହଉଛି ଯୋଉଟା କି the place is known as Bombay High ବୋଲି ତାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ and this name Bombay High has come from a word that the topography is anticlinal topography so anticline ଭିତରେ ଗୋଟେ anticlinal structure ଭିତରେ marine fossil decomposition ହେଇକି oil formation or natural gas formation ହେଇଛି those are being extracted in the name of Bombay High explorations providing crude oil then ସେଟା ଗୋଟେ offshore oil deposits of the Indian coast on the continental shelf that is a wider part of the continental shelf along the west coast the tectonic influence बहुत रही because Indian plate is having a active boundary along the Sunda Trench ଆଉ ତାପରେ East Australian Trench ଏ ଦିଟା ଆଗର ईस्टर्न साइड रे रही ट्रेंच कहना तो वेस्टर्न साइड रे रहीगला कॉन्टिनेंट तापर साउथ रे रहीगला अफ्रीका नॉर्थ रे रहीगला तो इट इज ए कंटीन्यूअस लैंड मास ऑफ द एशिया तेणु आमे we are contracting with the Indian plate is meeting माने contracting in contact with the African plate गोटे पटे आ गोटे पटे रही Antarctic plate आ गोटे पटे रही Asiatic plate तेणु एमती है कि the Indian plate is in juxtaposition to all these plates and these interactions are creating a dynamic bottom topography of the ocean तेणु एमती peculiarities रही so we need to understand all these things in terms of their peculiar characteristics आपको छाड़ी देला परे there are other things which are also called as the seas and basins जेमते हमर गल्फ इंडिया कोस्ट रे हमर इंडियन ओशन रो जदि नॉर्थ पोर्शन रे देखिबा गल्फ ऑफ खंबाट इज देयर ତାପରେ Gulf of Oman is there, ତାପରେ Red Sea is there. ଏମିତି ଯୋଉ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ ନା you will be finding as a part of the ocean. ଯେମିତି Pacific Ocean ରେ ଆମେ ଦେଖୁଛେ ଚାଇନା ସି, ସାଉଥ ଇଷ୍ଟ ଚାଇନା ସି, ତାପରେ ନର୍ଥ କୁ ଗଲେ ସି ବେରିଙ୍ଗ ଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଟ୍, ତାପରେ ଏପଟେ ଆସିଲେ ପୁଣି ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆନ ନ୍ୟୁଜିଲାଣ୍ଡ ତା ପାଖରେ there is a different name. ଏମିତି କିଛିଟା ସି and gulfs ରହିଛି, that is also a part of the ocean floor topography. ଯୋଉଟାକି isolated water bodies from the main ocean. Main ocean ରୁ ଟିକେ isolate ହେଇଛି by virtue of their topographic uniqueness. ତେଣୁ ସେଇ ଜାଗା ବି ଆମକୁ ଟିକେ ଟିକେ ଜାଣିବା ଦରକାର। ଯେମିତି ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକ ଓସନ ରେ ରହିଛି ଆମ ଇଷ୍ଟର୍ନ ସାଇଡ୍ କଣ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ରହିଛି। ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ interesting part of the Atlantic Ocean on the eastern side is you find along the east coast lot of what do we find along the east coast of Atlantic Ocean? Europe east coast re the Scandinavian islands are having a lot of boulders. Is a type of topography ରହିଛି that which is making these Scandinavian countries with a lot of boulders which are also the natural harbors. The boulders ଯଦି ରହିଲା ମାନେ that becomes a natural harbor. Boulders ମାନେ କ'ଣ? There is a huge depression between two mountains, and the sea is entering into that, and then the ships can also enter through that into that, and they can rest inside. The natural harbor se jaga creation kare when there has been boulder formation. ତାପରେ ଗୋଟେ hill ପାଖରେ ଦିଟା hill ମଝିରେ ଯଦି କିଛି area ରହିଗଲା ତା ଭିତରେ ସମୁଦ୍ର ପାଣି ପଶି ଆସିଛି, ବହୁତ depth ହେଇକି ରହିଛି, so then becomes a ideal place for the natural harbor. ତେଣୁ ଏମିତି situation ଆମର ବହୁତ ରହିଛି along the west coast of Europe. Europe coast ରହିଛି, but that is also the east part of the Atlantic Ocean. So Atlantic Ocean that is another uniqueness which is not there with the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. With three-type ocean, you find the bottom topography is largely varying one from other in terms of different type of features, in terms of volcanic activities, in terms of earthquake activities. That is also there is a lot of difference. The most active volcanoes and most active earthquake zones are concentrating in the Pacific. Next important comes to our Indian Ocean and then the Atlantic. There are, but there is also a very sensitive zone, earthquake zone and the volcanic eruption zone in the Caribbean region. There is peculiarity of the west coast of South America, where you find the again the mountains, towering mountains along the seashore. ସମୁଦ୍ର ପାଖରେ ରହିଛି ବହୁତ ଉଚ୍ଚ ଉଚ୍ଚ ପାହାଡ଼. So that is how the topography is much different from place to place, and we are supposed to understand something by virtue of their location. ତେଣୁ okay କିଛି ବୁଝିହେଲା ତ? Are you getting some of the important things of these three different oceans and their bottom topography characteristics? Anybody who can respond?
Again, sir.
କିଛି ବୁଝିହେଲା, understanding କିଛି ଆସିଲା? Are you clear about the things which are discussed?
Again, sir.
Ocean bottom ର topography ସହିତ କ'ଣ features are related and how they are related to the origin, how they are related to the distribution, how they are related to the different processes and activities. ତାପରେ ତାର subsequent utilization ବି ଆସିବ. ତେଣୁ we are supposed to know, and କିନ୍ତୁ ଖାଲି ସେମିତି ଜାଣିବାକୁ ହେଲେ ଟିକେ କଷ୍ଟ ହବ. ତ ଗୋଟେ ମ୍ୟାପ୍ ଧରିକି ବସିଲେ and segregation କରିଦେଲେ, list କରିଦେଲେ, ତମେ ଯଦି ଖାତା ପଏଣ୍ଟ ଧରିଛ ତାହେଲେ ଏ ଅନୁସାରେ list କରିଦିଅ. ପ୍ରତି ocean ର ଗୋଟେ format ରେ ଆମେ we can collect the information and describe. First point ହେଲା the continental shelf, second point ହେଲା continental slope, third point ହେଲା deep sea plain and the ocean basins. ଏ ହେଲା ତିନିଟା point. ତାପରେ ଆସିଲା mid-oceanic ridge and submerged mountains, plateaus, sea mounts and guyads. See what heading करते हो? लिख दो. Are you writing? ମିଟିଂ ଚାଲିଛି ପୁରା ସରିଯାଉ ସରିଲା ପରେ ଏଇଟା ଆମର ମିଟିଂ ଚାଲିଛି ନାଇଁ ଏବେ ନାଇଁ ତମେ ଏଇଟା ମୋର ସରିଯାଉ ମୁଁ ଆସିବି ଆସିଲେ ୱିଲ୍ ଡୁ
ମୁଁ ଏଇଟା ନେବି ଓକେ ତମେ ଆସିଲା ପରେ
ନାଇଁ ଏଇଟା ମୁଁ ପା କରୁଛି
ଆସିଲା ପରେ
ଓକେ 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 ୱିଲ୍ ସି ଓକେ ହଁ ଓକେ ଓକେ ତେଣୁ ଫାଷ୍ଟ ହେଲା କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ସେଲ୍ଫ କଣ୍ଟିନେଣ୍ଟାଲ ସ୍ଲୋପ ଡିପ୍ ସି ପ୍ଲେନ୍ ଆଣ୍ଡ ଓସେନ୍ ଡିପ୍ସ ତାପରେ ଆସିଲା ଆମର ସବମର୍ଜ ମିଡ୍ ଓସେନିକ୍ ରିଜେସ୍ ସି ମାଉଣ୍ଟସ୍ ଗୁୟର୍ସ and continental rise. Continental rise ମାନେ that is the replica of the continental ମାନେ plateaus. ଆମେ ଯାହାକୁ plateau କହୁଛେ land ଉପରେ ସେଇ type ର features ଯାକ ଯଦି ସମୁଦ୍ର ଭିତରେ ବୁଡ଼ିକି ରହେ then we call it as continental rise. ତେଣୁ ଇଏ ହେଲା ଗୋଟେ format ତାପରେ ହେଲା then you find discuss about the different basins. Different basins means within the ocean there are different segments to which they are given different basins. Brazil coast ପାଖରେ ରହିଛି Brazilian basin, Gulf of Mexico ରହିଛି Mexico basin. There are different names. So that attributes to the ocean basins along the shore. Then the ocean basins. ତାପରେ ଆସୁଛି then it comes to gulfs and seas. ଯେମିତି ଆମର Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of Oman, Gulf of Trafalgar, Gulf of combat. ଏମିତି ସବୁ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ ରହିଛି Gulf in different oceans at different places. Gulfs and seas. ଯେମିତି ଆମର Bay of Bengal, Arabian Sea, Red Sea, ଯେମିତି ରହିଛି South China Sea, Japanese Sea, Tasmania Sea, ଏମିତି ରହିଛି there are many locations which are named by different characteristics. ତେଣୁ ଇଏ ଗଲା ଗୋଟେ feature. ତାପରେ ଆସୁଛି then it comes to islands inside the ocean. Islands inside the ocean ଭିତରେ there are different categories. ଚାରିଟା category of island. ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା volcanic ridge islands, volcanic peaks and ridge islands ଗୋଟେ category. ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା mountain ridge islands. ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ category ହେଲା coral islands. ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ category ହେଲା ଆମର island arcs or archipelagos. Island arcs or archipelagos along the subduction zones. See ଗୋଟେ group of features. ତାପରେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ group of features ହେଲା trenches and subduction zones. ୟାକୁ ଛାଡ଼ିଦେଲା ପରେ you may write down some of the special features of the individual oceans. ସବୁ individual ocean ର ଗୋଟେ special feature ଅଛି. ଆଉ general characteristics of the ocean floor ସେଟା ପ୍ରଥମରୁ start ହବ ଯୋଉଥିରେ କି average depth କେତେ size କେତେ ତାପରେ extension କୋଉଠୁ କୋଉ ଯାଏ ଏ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷ ଯାକ general features. So this explains about the bottom topography of the ocean and the ocean related features. ଆଉ ତିନିଟା କ୍ୱେଶ୍ଚନ ର ଗୋଟେ ରେଖାଙ୍କିତ ମାନଚିତ୍ର ନିଜେ ତିଆରି କରିବାକୁ ଚେଷ୍ଟା କରିବ ଆଉ ତା ଭିତରେ ଏଇ ଲୋକେସନ ଯାକ ମେଜର ଫିଚର ଯାକର ଲୋକେସନ ଯାକ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପଡିବ ତେଣୁ if this is a question you have to if you are interested to attempt this question you have to attempt along with map ଯଦି କୌଣସି ସମୟରେ ଯଦି ଅସୁବିଧା ହଉଛି ଦେଖିବାରେ ତାହେଲେ କଣ କରିବ ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକ ଓସେନ କୁ ଦି ପାର୍ଟ ରେ ଦେଖେଇଦବ ନର୍ଥ ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକ ଓସେନ ସାଉଥ ଆଟଲାଣ୍ଟିକ ଓସେନ ତାପରେ ଦେଖି ଦେଇ ପାରିବ ନର୍ଥ ପାସିଫିକ ଓସେନ ସାଉଥ ପାସିଫିକ ଓସେନ ଏମିତି ବି ଦେଖିପାରିବ ନାଇଁ ଯଦି ସିଙ୍ଗଲ ଦେଖିପାରିବ ବି ଭଲ ଠିକ ଅଛି ଦେଖିବାରେ ବିଶେଷ ଅସୁବିଧା ନାହିଁ ରେଖାଙ୍କିତ ଚିତ୍ର କରିବ ସେପ୍ ଏକ୍ଜାକ୍ଟଲି ମ୍ୟାଚ୍ ନ କଲେ ବି ଚଳିବ ବଟ୍ ରିଲେଟିଭ ଲୋକେସନ୍ସ ଆର୍ ସପୋଜ ଟୁ depict your understanding of things. Okay. Okay, how କିଛି difficult ଜିନିଷ ଭିତରେ ଅଛି ବୁଝିବାକୁ ଚାହୁଁଛ? Anything that you want to know little more about? ଆଉ କିଛି ପଚାରିବାର ଅଛି ଏ ଭିତରେ ନା ଆଉ ଟିକେ ଆଗକୁ ଯିବା ଅନ୍ୟ ଟପିକ ଗୋଟେ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିବି?
ସାର୍ ଆରମ୍ଭ କରନ୍ତୁ।
ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍।
ଆଚ୍ଛା, ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଟପିକ ସାରିବା ସେଟା ହଉଛି ଆମର theories of origin of coral reefs. ଆମର ଅଛି କୋର୍ସରେ coral reefs are coral reefs ର theories of origin. ନେକ୍ସଟ କ୍ଲାସରେ ଦେଖିବା ଅନ୍ୟ ଜିନିଷ କରିବା। Coral reef ର characteristics ହେଲା କ'ଣ? What is a coral reef? What are its different type of coral reefs? What is the distribution of coral reefs? Where they are distributed? What is the peculiar characteristic of association of coral reef with the environment, coastal environment or the sea environment? ତାପରେ next comes to understanding about the origin of these reefs together. India ଆମର କୋଉଠି coral reefs ଅଛି? Can anybody tell where we find the coral reefs?
Gulf of Mannar, Lakshadweep.
Lakshadweep ଅଛି because the Lakshadweep itself is the all are coral islands. Lakshadweep ର ଯୋଉ island ଯାକ ସବୁ ଯାକ coral island.
ଆଜ୍ଞା।
ସେ କ'ଣ ହେଇଛି ନା ଗୋଟେ ଯୋଉ ଆମର ଯେମିତି ନଈରେ ଯେମିତି ପଠା ହୁଏନି ସମୁଦ୍ର ଭିତରେ କୋରାଲ ଯାକ ପଡ଼ିକି ସେ ଯାକ ସି ର ୱାଟର ଲେଭେଲ ଉପରକୁ ଉଠିଛି। ତାପରେ କିଛିଟା ସାଣ୍ଡ ଆଉ ସିଲ୍ଟ ଡିପୋଜିସନ ହେଇକି ମଡ୍ ଡିପୋଜିଟ ହେଇକି ସେ ଯାକ ସିମେଣ୍ଟେଡ ହେଇଯାଇଛି। ତା ଉପରେ କିଛି ଗଛପତ୍ର ଉଠିକି ସେ ଯାକ ଗୋଟେ ଆଇଲାଣ୍ଡ ର ସେପ୍ ନେଇଛି। So this is what is the type of coral island. କେତେ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ଅଛି circular island, କେତେ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ଅଛି elongated ଲମ୍ବା ଲମ୍ବା ହେଇକି ମାନେ ରିଜ୍ ଭଳିଆ ଗୋଟେ ମାନେ ପାଚେରୀ ଭଳିଆ ହେଇକି ରହିଛି। ଆଉ କିଛିଟା ରହିଛି ଏମିତି ପ୍ୟାଚ୍ ହେଇକି ରହିଛି ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଜାଗାରେ। So there are three different coral reefs. ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ଯଦି ବେସିକାଲି ଯିବା coral reefs କୁ, coral reef ର ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ properties ରହିଛି ଯୋଉଟା କି it relates to ତ ମୁଁ ଯେମିତି କହିଲି ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା climate change ସହିତ it is very severe ମାନେ seriously it is or intricately ମାନେ associated with the climate change. କାହିଁକିନା coral reef ର distribution ର climate change ର variation କଥା ଜଣା ପଡ଼େ। ତେଣୁ coral reefs are a kind of sea anemone which are grown in the sea in a relatively over the continental shelf zone. ପାଖାପାଖି continental shelf zone ରେ ସେ ଯାକ ରହନ୍ତି, ସେ ଯାକ କେତେବେଳେ deep sea ରେ ରହନ୍ତିନି। Coral reefs are the sea anemones which are living inside the water which grow and develop by creating a calcium cell around their body, taking different patterns of growth. ତେଣୁ ସେଇ ଯାକ ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ ଛୋଟ ଆମର ଯେମିତି ପୋକ ସବୁ ଥାଏ ତା ଉପରେ ଯେମିତି ଗୁଟା ଗୁଡ଼ି ହେଇଥାନ୍ତି, ବହୁତ ପୋକ ଦେଖିଥିବ, ଇଏ ବି ସେମିତି ଗୋଟେ ତା ଭିତରେ ଗୋଟେ small sea anemone surrounded by the calcium cells. ତେଣୁ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ calcium cell ଟା surround ହେଇଥାଏ, ସେ calcium cell ଯାକ ବିଭିନ୍ନ ୱେରେ ଗ୍ରୋ କରେ depending on the characteristics of those sea anemones. ତେଣୁ ବହୁତ ଜାଗାରେ କ'ଣ ହେଇଛି ନା sea anemones are growing like trees. ଗଛ ଭଳିଆ ସେ ବଢ଼ି ଯିବ, ଯେତେବେଳେ ବଡ଼ ହଉଥିବ ତାର ଓଜନରେ ଭାଙ୍ଗି ପଡ଼ିବ କିମ୍ବା କେତେ ପବନ ଆସି ଭାଙ୍ଗି ପଡ଼ିବ, ଟାଇଡ୍ ଆସିକି ଭାଙ୍ଗି ପଡ଼ିବ କିମ୍ବା ୱେଭ୍ ଆସିକି ଭାଙ୍ଗି ପଡ଼ିବ, ଫ୍ଲୋରରେ ପଡ଼ିବ। ପୁଣି ସେଇ ଯୋଉ ଭଙ୍ଗା ଦେହରେ ଯୋଉ ଆନିମଲ ଥିବେ ସେ ଯାକ ପୁଣି ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବେ ଆଉଥରେ। ଗ୍ରୋ କଲେ ପୁଣି ତାଙ୍କର ସେଲ୍ ବିଲ୍ଡ କରିବେ, ସେ ଉପରକୁ ବଢି ବଢି ଚାଲିବେ, କିଛି ମରିଯିବେ, କିଛି ପୁଣି ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବେ। So ଏଇ ଯୋଉ କଣ୍ଟିନ୍ୟୁଅସ୍ ପ୍ରୋସେସ ଚାଲିଥାଏ ଉୟୁଙ୍କା ଭଳିଆ, ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ଜଷ୍ଟ ଲାଇକ୍ ଆୱାର ଆଣ୍ଡ ମୋଲ୍ ହିଲ୍ସ, ଯେମିତି ସେମିତି। So they are growing in different parts of the ocean. So coral reefs are sea animals carrying calcium cells around their body, growing in the shallow seas, in high temperature, relatively warm seas along the continental shelves. There are certain favorable conditions in which these coral reefs used to grow. प्रथम कथा है coral reefs will not grow in the muddy water. जोटी coral reef grow करिवे सेठी absolutely water will be free from dust and mud and turbidity. କିଛି ନଥିବ, ଟ୍ରାନ୍ସପାରେଣ୍ଟ ଥିବ। ତେଣୁ ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ବୋଲି ଆମେ ଆଣ୍ଡାମାନ ନିକୋବର ଗଲେ କି ଆମେ ମାଲଦୀପ ଗଲେ କି ଲାକ୍ଷାଦ୍ୱୀପ ଗଲେ, ସମୁଦ୍ର ଭିତରକୁ ଗଲେ, ତମେ ଡଙ୍ଗାରେ ବସିକି ସମୁଦ୍ର ତଳକୁ ଦେଖିପାରିବ ବାଲି ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ। The water is so pure without any impurities. And impurity ଯଦି ରହେ, that chokes the mouth of the body of the coral reefs, and coral reefs could not eat and they die. ତେଣୁ coral reefs used to grow in water which are free from sediments. Number one. Coral reefs always require a temperature of around 25-26 degree temperature. ताटू अधिका पछे हबो, ताटू कम हेले सेमाने कोल्ड रे रही परिबे नाही, they will not grow, they will die out. So they grow in warm seas with a temperature of 25 and above temperature. Then around 25-26 temperature is a very ideal temperature for their growth and development. Then sediment free water, shallow zone काहे कि ना coral reefs जो zone रे रहिबो, से zone को जदि sunlight penetrate न करिवो, ताहाले सेठी phytoplanktons grow करिवोनी। Phytoplanktons माने like floating algae in the sea, and these floating algae are the food for the corals. They are also food for the small fishes. ତେଣୁ ସେଇଟା ଗୋଟେ ବେସିକ ଜିନିଷ ଯୋଉଥିପାଇଁ କି ଯଦି ସେଇ କଣ୍ଡିସନ ନ ରହୁଛି ତାହେଲେ corals will not grow, they cannot thrive and sustain. ତେଣୁ shallowness of the sea within a depth of about ପାଖାପାଖି 200 ଫୁଟ ଭିତରେ ଦେଇ ଡେପ୍ଥ ରେ ଗ୍ରୋ କରନ୍ତି ଭଲ ideally. So shallow depth, temperature around 25-26 degree temperature, and then dust free or sediment free water. এই তিনটা জিনিস হলা most ideal condition, and these three things are possible because temperature is possible when it is a tropical zone. Because temperate zone আসলে temperature কমে যাবে। তেଣୁ coral reefs will never grow in the temperate zone, they will only live in the equatorial or tropical zone. Number one. They cannot grow in the river mouth areas because there is a lot of sediments are coming to the sea from the river mouth. So they will grow away from the river mouth. Number two. Number three, shallow depth. Wherever there is a depth is shallow. So that it gets a platform to grow. प्रथमे गोटे प्लेटफॉर्म दरकार ता ग्रो करिया काहे से फ्लोटिंग रे ग्रो करंती नाही. The coral reefs will never grow in a floating condition. They will be rooted to the floor. से फ्लोर ऊपर से रही की ग्रो करिवे. तापर भांगी जाउथबो, से फ्लोर ऊपर पड़ी जाउथबो, पुणी फ्लोर ऊंचाई जाउथबो, ता ऊपर पुणी आउथरे ग्रो करथिबे, तापर फ्लोर पुणी भांगी पडुथबो. So this is the continuous process going on. कोरल रीफ जाके इन कोर्स ऑफ टाइम भी माने विभिन्न शेप, विभिन्न कलर रो देखा जाती, बहुत सारी दे लुक दे गिव ए ब्यूटी टू दी सी. तेणु कोरल रीफ जाका बहुत समय ट्री भलिया था, बहुत समय पत्र भलिया था, बहुत समय मासी पत्थर जमी देखा जाए, से सेमती भी समुद्र पानी भितर देखा जाए मासी पत्थर भलिया डट 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 हेतिबो, स्मॉल कैविटीज हेतिबो, बट इट इज द फ्लोर इज फुल ऑफ दिस कोरल्स ऑफ मैसिव कोरल्स. विराट बड़ बड़ पत्थर खंड भलिया लागुथबो, किंतु से जाक coral reefs with small holes inside. से होल भीतर से रहती, तापर ग्रो करती, तापर मर जाती, से जगह रही कि हार्ड हो जाए. जदि ई कंडीशन टा जदि सुटेबल जदि पॉल्यूशन फ्री जदि न हो ताहले भी कोरल रीफ विल नॉट ग्रो कहीं जदि पॉल्यूशन जदि हुए ताहले कोन हुए सेटा कैल्शियम रॉक्स माने कैल्शियम कंपाउंड रो सेल जाको कैल्शियम कार्बोनेट जदि एसिडिटी कंडीशन डेवलप करिवो इफ देयर इज पॉल्यूशन एंड एसिडिटी कंडीशन डेवलप्स ताहले कोन हो ना ए जगह ब्लीचिंग हो कैल्शियम विल बी ब्लीचिंग आउट कैल्शियम ब्लीचिंग हेले कोरल पॉलिप जगह मरि जिवे so the pollution free water is also supposed to be an important requirement जदि pollution रहुछि ताले भी coral reef grow करिवे नाही so these are the four ideal conditions in which coral reefs used to grow तेणु वर्तमान आमर देखा जाउछि कोटि कोटि if you look to the spatial distribution of coral reefs across the oceans we will find आमे कोटि देखुछे वर्तमान Indian coast रे only if you find you go to the Andaman Nicobar you will find at some places coral reefs if you go to this Maldives Lakshadweep you find totally the islands are grown on the coral reefs. The island itself is a coral island. Because the floor of the island is made of coral. जैसे कि हार्ड है कि पत्थर वाला है जाए तापर आइलैंड टा ग्रो करी करी चलची माटी वाली डिपॉजिट है so similar situations also exist in some parts of Atlantic Ocean some part major part of the Central Pacific Ocean रे बहुत जगह जो आइलैंड जगह अछि छोट छोट आइलैंड जगह नई बेसी नाही तेनु सेडिमेंट बेसी आसुनी तेनु ocean water is free from sediments so these are the very ideal conditions of temperature and the depth as well as the sediment free water तेनु Central Pacific रे बहुत जगह रे आ तापरे Caribbean Sea रे बहुत जगह रे ए जगह रे रही सिगारे से बड़ नई किछि आसीबार नाही these are the distributions of coral reefs across the globe so now the question comes of how these coral reefs used to grow in these conditions because the fallacy is we are now finding coral reefs in temperate zone वर्तमान किंतु जदि देखा जाए बहुत जगह रे टेम्परेट जोन रे टेम्परेचर 25 डिग्री रु कम जगह रे कोरल रीफ जाके अछन रीफ अछि लोक रीफ रो से जो सी एनिमल नाही ताकर ब्रोकन रीफ जगह रही छी so these reefs are found in the temperate zone where the temperature is much lower than 25 degree coral reefs are found in the river mouth areas where there are a lot of sediments coral reefs are found in those areas where the depth is also very high. Then the question comes up, if those are the conditions ideal for the growth of corals, then how corals are found in such adverse conditions across the globe? Globe ro joti joti emti jaga re dekha jaujani se jaga ko coral reef asila kemiti? How things happen? So that investigation led to two possible solutions. Dita possible solution को indicate कला. गोटे हला जे ई जो कोरल जगह वर्तमान जोठी रहिबा कथा नुह सेठी अछंती once upon a time those areas must have a congenial climate must have a congenial sea temperature must have a congenial depth ए तीनटा का जिनस जदि आइडियल हेतिबो ताहाले से जगह रे हपा कथा किंतु वर्तमान से जगह रे से कंडीशन नाही ता माने हला either the reefs have changed their position or the climate has changed their position जो जगह रीफ हेतला से जगह क्लाइमेट एंड अदर कंडीशन सुइटेबल थिला वर्तमान चेंज हे जाय क्लाइमेट एंड द प्लेस किंबा से जगह रे आइडियल क्लाइमेट थिला डेप्थ भी सुइटेबल थिला टेंपरेचर भी सुइटेबल थिला so both of these indicates that either the climate has changed or the place has changed to a different climate so that becomes a very intriguing question and ultimately people started relating this to the drifting of the continents and movement of the plates and dislocation of just like India dislocating from Africa coming to this as Indian peninsula attaching to the Indian Asiatic landmass. जेमती सेमती विभिन्न जगह रे जो प्लेट रो मोशन नेछि से प्लेट रो मोशन रे जो प्लेट भितर कोरल रीफ थिले से जगह रो आउट जगह को पळी छन शिफ्ट हे छन बिकॉज़ ऑफ द मूवमेंट ऑफ द प्लेट्स कन्वेयर बेल्ट जतो शिफ्ट हे जाईछि ता देर जो मटेरियल थिला से जगह शिफ्ट हे की पळी So this is what is the conclusion which is being derived from the continental drift and the plate tectonics theory, which explains why the distributions are so different in the globe. तेणु याकू स्टडी करिया पई ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଜିନିଷ ଆସିଲା କ'ଣ ଯେ ଠିକ୍ ଅଛି ଏଇଟା ଯଦି ହେଲା ଠିକ୍ ଓକେ ବଟ୍ ହାଉ ଦି କୋରାଲ ରିଫ୍ସ ଆର୍ ଗ୍ରୋଇଂ ଇନ୍ ସଚ୍ ଗ୍ରେଟର ଡେପ୍ଥ। କୋରାଲ ରିଫ୍ ତ ସବୁବେଳେ ୟୁଫୋଟିକ୍ ଜୋନ୍ରେ ବା ଫୋଟିକ୍ ଜୋନ୍ରେ ଦେଖାଯିବା କଥା, ଯୋଉଠିକି ସନଲାଇଟ୍ ପେନିଟ୍ରେଟ୍ କରିପାରିବ, ତା ତଳକୁ ହେବା କଥା ନୁହଁ। କିନ୍ତୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡେ ଜାଗାରେ ଇଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ below 500 feet, below 1000 feet also coral reefs are there. ଏତେ ଡିପ୍ ସି ଭିତରେ କୋରାଲ ରିଫ୍ କେମିତି ଦେଖାଯାଉଛି? ତେଣୁ ସେଇଟା ପାଇଁ ବୋଲି there has been a lot of studies and lot of research and there are many people have tried to study right from this famous environmentalist Darwin to ଆରମ୍ଭ କରି there are many other people who have also tried to study this and devise some of the theories of explaining the growth of these coral reefs. Theta major theory of growth of coral reefs ରହିଛି ଯୋଉଟା କି explain କରେ ଏମିତି situation ରେ କାହିଁକି coral reefs ହେଇଛି why ଗୋଟେ ହେଲା Darwin Dana's theory of subsidence theory of Darwin and Dana. Darwin ହେଲା ଆମର ଯୋଉ ଚାର୍ଲସ ଡାରୱିନ ଆଉ ଡାନା ହେଲା ତାଙ୍କର ଜଣେ contemporary who was also accompanying him in the sea voyage. ସେ ଯୋଉ ଶିପ୍ ରେ ଯାଉଥିଲେ ସେ ଶିପ୍ ର ନାଁ ହେଲା ବିଗଲ। ସେ ବିଗଲ ଶିପ୍ ରେ ଏମାନେ ଯାଉଥିଲେ ଏକ୍ସପେଡିସନ କରୁଥିଲେ ଯୋଉ ସମୟରେ କି ସେମାନେ କଲେକ୍ଟିଂ ଇନଫର୍ମେସନ and ସେଇ ସମୟରେ ସେମାନେ ଅବଜର୍ଭ କରିଥିଲେ and that idea has been converted into a theory in the subsequent years by them which is called the subsidence theory of coral reefs. ତେଣୁ କ'ଣ ହୁଏ gradually subsidence theory ରେ corals used to grow from a suitable depth. ଗୋଟେ suitable depth ରେ ଯୋଉଠି କି sunlight ଯାଉଛି penetration ହଉଛି ଆଉ conditions of temperature and sediment free water is available ସେଇ ଜାଗାରେ ସାଧାରଣତଃ these coral reefs used to start growing. କିନ୍ତୁ କିଛି ଦିନ ଗ୍ରୋ କଲା ପରେ ସେ କ'ଣ ହୁଏ ନା ସେ ଜାଗା ଭାଙ୍ଗିଯାଏ, ରିଫ୍ସ ଯାକ ଭାଙ୍ଗିଯାଏ, ଭାଙ୍ଗିକି ତଳେ ପଡେ, ଫ୍ଲୋରରେ ପଡେ, ଫ୍ଲୋରରେ ପଡିଲା ପରେ they gradually descend into the sea, into the higher depth. ତେଣୁ ଏମିତି ଯୋଉ continuous growth and continuous breaking and falling on the floor of the sea has taken these reefs to the much deeper water, whereas those are the dry reef areas, କିନ୍ତୁ ଯୋଉ active reef areas are remaining towards the surface. ତଳକୁ ଜାଗା ଭାଙ୍ଗିଗଲା ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ମରିଗଲେ, କିଛିଟା ବଞ୍ଚିଗଲେ, ଯୋଉ ବଞ୍ଚିବା ଜାଗା ସେ ଜାଗା ଉପରକୁ ଉଠି ଉଠି ଆସିଲେ। ଏମିତି ହେଇକି ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ବହୁତ ଡେପ୍ଥରେ ଆମେ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପାଉଛେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ coral reefs. So you find coral reefs in a much greater depth. So Darwin-Dana's theory is explaining that. The subsidence theory, that means ଦିଟା ଜିନିଷ either ସେମିତି ଭାଙ୍ଗିକି ଆସ୍ତେ ଆସ୍ତେ ତଳକୁ ଖସି ଖସି ଯାଇଛି greater depth କୁ or else there has been subsidence of the sea floor at different stages of the earth movements. और eustatic and isostatic movement रे earthquake movement रे बहुत समय sea floor जाक बहुत जगह रे दबी जाइछि। तेणु जोठी where these coral reefs were growing से जगह रे जदि subsidence हेइ जाइछि ताले coral reefs has gone into much greater depth ଆଉ तापर से जगह रो पुणी ऊपर को ग्रो करिकी आसीछन ऊपर। So this is how this is explaining about the growth of corals based on the subsidence theory of the sea surface. ତେଣୁ ଆର କିଛିଟା ପଜିଟିଭ ମାନେ ନେଗେଟିଭ ପଏଣ୍ଟସ୍ ଅଛି, କିଛିଟା ପଜିଟିଭ ପଏଣ୍ଟସ୍ ଅଛି। there are many coral reefs which are contributing to this idea ଯୋଉଟାକୁ ମ୍ୟାଚ୍ କରୁଛି, but there are also exceptions. There are also exceptions ଯୋଉ ଜାଗାରେ କି କିଛି ଏମିତି ବି ହେଇଛି ଯୋଉ ଜାଗାରେ subsidence ହେଇନି ଆଉ ଯୋଉ ଜାଗାରେ sediment free water ନାହିଁ ସେ ଜାଗାରେ କେମିତି ରହିଯାଇଛି, there are exceptions. They are not exactly matching to all distribution of reefs. The major distributions are explained through this process. So this is one of the theory. ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ second theory ଥିଲା ଆମର Louis Agassiz ବୋଲି there was another geologist or scientist. ତାଙ୍କର ଗୋଟେ theory ଥିଲା glacial control theory of coral reef formation. Glacial control of coral reef ମାନେ କ'ଣ ଥିଲା ନା during the ice age the polar ice is extending towards mid latitudes. ମାନେ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଯୋଉ polar ice north pole ରେ କି south pole ରେ ଅଛି ଯେତେବେଳେ ice age ଆସିବ ସେ ଏକ ice ର extension ବଢି ବଢି ଆସିକି ଆମର 45 ଡିଗ୍ରୀ ପର୍ଯ୍ୟନ୍ତ ବହୁତ ସମୟରେ ପହଞ୍ଚି ଯାଉଥିଲା ଆଗରୁ। 45 ଡିଗ୍ରୀ ଯେତେବେଳେ ପହଞ୍ଚି ଯାଏ ସେତେବେଳେ କ'ଣ ହୁଏ? A large part of the earth's surface remains under ice cover. ତେଣୁ ବାକି ଯୋଉ ଏକ୍ସପୋଜ ପୋର୍ସନ ରହିଲା ସେ ଏକ୍ସପୋଜ ପୋର୍ସନରେ କୋରାଲ ରିଫ ଗ୍ରୋ କରିଛି। ଯେତେବେଳେ ପୁଣି ଆଇସ୍ ଏଜ୍ ପଳେଇଲା ପରେ when the ice age has gone and the ice has melted and the ice shrink ହେଇଯାଇଛି, ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଯେମିତି shrink ହେଇଗଲାଣି, ଆଇସ୍ ର ଏରିଆ କମିଗଲାଣି, ତେଣୁ ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ପାର୍ଟ ଅଫ ଦ ଆର୍ଥ ସର୍ଫେସ୍ ଇଜ ଏକ୍ସପୋଜ ନାଉ ଟୁ ଦି ସବମର୍ଜିଂ ୱାଟର ଆଣ୍ଡ ଦି ସି। ତେଣୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ସେ ଜାଗା ଜାଗାରେ କୋରାଲ ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବ, କାହିଁକିନା ସେ ଜାଗା ଜାଗାରେ ଟେମ୍ପରେଚର ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ଆଇଡିଆଲ ହେଲାଣି, ଡେପ୍ଥ ଟିକେ ଆଇଡିଆଲ ଅଛି, ସେଡିମେଣ୍ଟ ନାହିଁ, ତେଣୁ ସେ ଜାଗାରେ ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବ। ଯେତେବେଳେ ଆଇସ୍ ଆସିବ ପୁଣି ସେ ଜାଗା ଆଇସ୍ ଏଜରେ ଆଇସ୍ ର ଇଏ ଭିତରକୁ ଡୋମେନ୍ ଭିତରକୁ ଆସିକି ପୁଣି ସେ କୋରାଲ ତକ ମରିବେ, ବଟ୍ ଦି ରିଫ୍ ୱିଲ୍ ରିମେନ୍। ତେଣୁ ଏଇଟା ହେଲା ଦିସ୍ ଇଜ ହାଉ ଦ ଗ୍ଲାସିଆଲ କଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଲ ଗ୍ଲାସିଆଲ ଇଜ୍ ଓଭର ଦି ଆର୍ଥ ସର୍ଫେସ୍ has been responsible for। ତେଣୁ ଯେତେବେଳେ ସେମିତି ଗ୍ଲାସିଆଲ ଏଜ୍ ହେଇଗଲା ସେତେବେଳେ କୋରାଲ ରିଫ୍ ଜାଗା ଗୋଟେ ମାଇଗ୍ରେଟ୍ କଲେ ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରୁ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାକୁ। So the distribution has gone here and there based on the control of this ice through the ice glacial ices। ତେଣୁ ଆକୁ କୁହାଗଲା glacial control theory of growth and development of coral reefs। ଇଏ ହେଲା ଦିଟା important theory। ଏଇ ଯୋଉ coral reefs ଯାକ ଆମର ଦେଖାଯାଏ, it is a mass of coral cells aggregated together by some cementing materials। ତା ଭିତରେ ଯଦି ହୋଲ ଅଛି ସେ ହୋଲ ଭିତରେ କିଛିଟା ଉଇ ଭଳିଆ ସେ ଯୋଉ ଏନିମଲ୍ ଯାକ ରହନ୍ତି, ସେ ଏନିମଲ୍। So these are exhibited on the surface in the topographic form। There are three different topographic form in which they exhibit themselves। ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରେ ଗୋଟେ ମାସ୍ ଭଳିଆ ଯଦି ମାଟି ଜମା ହେଲା ଭଳିଆ ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରେ accumulate ହେଇଥାଏ, and that is what is called as fringing reef। କୋଷ୍ଟ ପାଖରୁ ଟିକେ ଭିତରକୁ under ideal situation ଡେପ୍ଥର ସିଚୁଏସନରେ କିଛି କୋରାଲ ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରେ ଜମିକି ରହିଲା ହିପ୍ ଭଳିଆ ହେଇକି, ମାଉଣ୍ଟ ଭଳିଆ ହେଇକି, these are called as the fringing reefs। ଏଇଠି ଗୋଟେ ସେଠି ଗୋଟେ ସେଠି ଗୋଟେ ଏମିତି ହେଇକି କୋଷ୍ଟ ପାଖରୁ ଟିକେ ଭିତରକୁ ସମୁଦ୍ର ଭିତରେ ଗୋଟେ ଲାଇନ ଭଳିଆ ଏମିତି ହେଇକି ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବ। So that is what is the fringing reef। If these fringing reefs are joined together continuously ଗୋଟେ ରିଜ୍ ଭଳିଆ ବା ଗୋଟେ ପାଚେରୀ ଭଳିଆ ଯଦି ଗ୍ରୋ କରେ ତାହେଲେ ତାକୁ କୁହାଯାଏ ବ୍ୟାରିୟର ରିଫ୍। ଯେମିତିକି ଆମର ଗ୍ରେଟ୍ ବ୍ୟାରିୟର ରିଫ୍ ଅଫ୍ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆ, ଯାହାର ଲେନ୍ଥ ହେଉଛି 1200 କିଲୋମିଟର, ଇଷ୍ଟ କୋଷ୍ଟ ଅଫ୍ ଅଷ୍ଟ୍ରେଲିଆରେ ଲମ୍ବିକି ରହିଛି, ଅଧା ଏକ୍ସପୋଜ ହେଇକି ରହିଛି, ଅଧା ସମୁଦ୍ର ଭିତରେ ରହିଛି। And that is the highest coral concentration zone of the world। 1200 କିଲୋମିଟର ଲମ୍ବାର ଏ ଯୋଉ କୋରାଲ ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ, and that is a barrier reef। ବ୍ୟାରିୟର ମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ୱାଲ୍ ଭଳିଆ, ଯେମିତି ଆମର ବ୍ୟାରିୟର ବାର୍ସ ଯେମିତି ହୁଏ, ଯେ ମଫଲରେ ପଡ଼ିଛ ସେମିତି ବ୍ୟାରିୟର ରିଫ୍ ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ। ତାପରେ ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଟାଇପର ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ହୁଅନ୍ତି, ସେ ଯାକ କହନ୍ତି ଆଟୋଲ। ଆଟୋଲ ମାନେ କଣ ହୁଏ, ଗୋଟେ ମଝିରେ ଯଦି ଗୋଟେ ମାଉଣ୍ଟ ଅଛି, ସେ ଭିତରେ ଯଦି ଗୋଟେ କୌଣସି ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାରେ ଟିକେ ହାଇ ଏଲିଭେସନ ଏରିଆ ହେଲା, ତାର ସରାଉଣ୍ଡିଂରେ ଚାରିକଡ଼ରେ ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡର ଚାରିକଡ଼ରେ there will be a lot of coral growths like fringing reef and barrier reef ହେଇକି ଚାରିକଡ଼ରେ ଗ୍ରୋ କରିବ, ମଝିରେ ସେ ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡଟା ରହିଯିବ। ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡଟା ରହିଗଲା ପରେ between the barrier reef and the island there will be a shallow zone। ସେ shallow zone ଯାକ gradually ପୋତି ହେବ by the coral। ତାପରେ coral will again start growing towards the sea। ସେଇତକ ଜୋନ୍ ପୁଣି କୋରାଲର ଇଏ ଦେହରେ ମିଶିଯିବ, and the coral island will be started growing towards the sea on all the three sides, all the four sides। ଚାରିପଟ ଜାଗାରେ କୋରାଲ ତାର ବଢି ବଢି ଚାଲିଥିବ, ଆଇଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ବଢି ବଢି ଚାଲିଥିବ, and the this is what is called as an atoll, ATOLL, atoll। So there are three types of coral island corals: fringing reef, barrier reef and atoll। ଆଉ ଆମର ବହୁତ ଗୁଡ଼ିଏ ଆଟଲ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳେ ଲାକ୍ଷାଦ୍ୱୀପ ଆଉ ମାଲଦୀପ୍ସରେ। there are a lot of, କିନ୍ତୁ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ fringing reef ଆଉ barrier reef ଯାକ ଆଣ୍ଡାମାନରେ ବେଶୀ ଦେଖିବାକୁ ମିଳେ। So this is all about our glacial control theory and the subsidence theory। ଠିକ ଅଛି, ଆଜି ଏତିକିରେ ରଖିବା, କାଲି ଆଉ ଥରେ ଡିସ୍କସନ କରିବା ଆଉ ଯାହା ଦେଖିବା। ଓକେ
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍।
ସାର୍ ଗୋଟେ ଛୋଟ ରିକ୍ୱେଷ୍ଟ ଥିଲା ସାର୍। ସାର୍ ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ଆମର ସ୍କୁଲ ସାର୍ ଅଫ୍ ହେଲା ବେଳକୁ ପ୍ରାୟ ହେଇଯାଉଛି ସାର୍ 4ଟା, 4:30, 4:45 ସାର୍। ଆମେ ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି କାଲିର କ୍ଲାସଟା ବି ଆପଣଙ୍କର ଟୋଟାଲି ମିସ୍ କରିଗଲୁ। ଆଉ ଆଜି ବି ପୁରା ମାନେ
ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ କୁହ 5ଟା କରିଦେବେ,
ଅ,
5ଟାରୁ
ସାର୍
7ଟା କରିଦେବେ, ନହେଲେ
କୋଉ
4:30ରୁ 5:30 6:30 କରିଦେବେ। ସେମାନଙ୍କୁ
ଆଜ୍ଞା
କହିବ ଆମ ଯୋଉମାନେ ଅର୍ଗାନାଇଜ କରୁନାହାନ୍ତି
ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍
ଇଗ୍ନୋ ବାଲା ତାଙ୍କୁ କହିଲେ ସେ କରିଦେବେ।
ଆଜ୍ଞା ତ
କିଛି
ସାର୍ ମେଲ୍
ଅସୁବିଧା ନାହିଁ, ମୋର ଆଇ ହାଭ୍ ନୋ ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ। ମୁଁ
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଏକୋମୋଡେଟ୍ କରିଦେବି। ସେମାନେ ତାଙ୍କର ନୋଟିଫାଇ କରିବେ ସବୁ ପିଲାଙ୍କୁ ସେ ଅନୁସାରେ।
ନାଇଁ
ଓକେ
ସାର୍ ମେଲ୍ କରିବୁ ନା କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ କରି କହିବୁ ସାର୍?
ତାଙ୍କୁ କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ କରି ଫୋନ କରି କହିଦିଅ, ଯଦି ଫୋନ ନମ୍ବର ଅଛି, ମେଲ୍ ଯଦି ଅଛି, ହ୍ୱାଟ୍ସଆପ ନମ୍ବର ଅଛି, ତାଙ୍କୁ ସେଥିରେ ବି ମେସେଜ କରିଦିଅ, ଫୋନରେ ବି କଣ୍ଟାକ୍ଟ କରି କହିଦିଅ।
ସାର୍ ସାର୍ ସାର୍
କହିଦେଲେ କ୍ରିଏଟ୍ ନୋଟିସ୍ ଆଉ ସବୁ
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ପିଲାମାନଙ୍କୁ ଆଟଲିଷ୍ଟ 4:30 ହେଲେ ମତେ ଲାଗୁଛି ହେଇଯାଇପାରେ।
ନାଇଁ ସାର୍ 5ଟା ହେଲେ ହିଁ ହବ ସାର୍,
ଆଚ୍ଛା
କାରଣ
ହେଲେ
ସ୍କୁଲ ଟାଇମ ହଉଛି 4:30 ସାର୍ ଅଫର।
ତମେ କୋଉଠି ଅଛ? ପ୍ରସନ୍ନ କୁମାର ମିଶ୍ର ନାଇଁ?
ସାର୍ ମୁଁ OEB ସୋନପୁରରେ ଅଛି ସାର୍।
ଏ ବି ସୋନପୁର, ଆଚ୍ଛା। ହୁଁ। ଠିକ ଅଛି, ଆଉ କଣ କୁହ? ମୋର
ସାର୍ ନଥିଙ୍ଗ ସାର୍ ଏଇ ଦରକାର ଥିଲା ସାର୍।
ବୁଝିବା ଠିକ ଅଛି, କ୍ଲାରିଟି
ହଁ
ଅଫ
ସାର୍
ଅଣ୍ଡରଷ୍ଟାଣ୍ଡିଂ।
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍ ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍।
ଆଜି କଣ ତ ଫଟୋ ଚାଲିଲାନି, ଦେଖିବା କାଲି ପୁଣି ଦେଖିବା ଆଉ କିଛି କଣ ପାଇଁ ଆଜି ପ୍ରୋବ୍ଲେମ ହେଲା କେଜାଣି ଜାଣିବନି।
ହଁ ସାର୍ ୟାର କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ଟା ଲାଷ୍ଟ ଆଡକୁ ଆଉ ଦେଖି ହେଲାନି ସାର୍, ସେଇଟା ହଉଛି କଥା। ସେଇ ଯୋଉ ଆପଣ ଥିଓରି ଦିଟାକୁ ବୁଝେଇଲେ ଆଉ ଆଟଲ ଆଉ ବାକିଟାର ଯୋଉ
ନାଇଁ ତାର କିଛି ମୁଁ ଆଣିନି, କଣ୍ଟେଣ୍ଟ ଆଣିନି ମୁଁ, ସେଇଟା ସେମିତି
ଆଚ୍ଛା ସେଟା ମାନେ ଆପଣ ଭର୍ବାଲି ବୁଝଉଥିଲେ ତାହେଲେ ସାର୍?
ଭର୍ବାଲି ବୁଝଉଥିଲି, କାହିଁକିନା ମୁଁ ଭାବୁଥିଲି ଟାଇମ୍ ହେଇଯିବ ବୋଲି, କିନ୍ତୁ ଟାଇମ୍ ବଢିଲା ତ, ତେଣୁ ମୁଁ କହିଲି ଟପିକଟା ଡିସ୍କସନ କରିଦେଇଥିବା,
ଆଜ୍ଞା
କାହିଁକିନା
ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା
ଟାଇମ୍
ସାର୍ ଆଜ୍ଞା
କମ ଅଛି।
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍
ମୁଁ କିନ୍ତୁ ଦେଖେଇଦେବି ତମକୁ, ଆ ଭିତରେ ଜିଓଗ୍ରାଫିକ ପିକ୍ଚର୍ସ କେତେଗୁଡେ ଦେଖେଇଦେବି, ଯୋଉଟା କି ଏ ସବୁ ଜିନିଷକୁ ଗୋଟେ ଲାଷ୍ଟ କ୍ଲାସରେ ଦେଖେଇଦେବି।
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍
ମତେ କଣ କି ତାକୁ କଲେକ୍ସନ କରିବାକୁ ପଡିବ, ସବୁ ଜାଗା ଗୋଟେ ଜାଗାକୁ ଆଣିଲେ ଯାଇକି ତମକୁ ଦେଖେଇ ହବ।
ଆଜ୍ଞା ସାର୍
ଏମିତି ଖାଲି ତ କହିଲେ ହବନି, ପିକ୍ଚର ଦେଖିବାକୁ ପଡିବ। ଆଉ ତମର ତ ଏଇଟା କ୍ଲାସ ନୁହଁ ନା, ତେଣୁ ଆମେ ତ ତାକୁ ଏତେ ଟାଇମ ଦେଇ ପାରୁନାହାନ୍ତି। ସେମାନେ 3-4ଟା କ୍ଲାସ କରିଛନ୍ତି ମାତ୍ର ଜଷ୍ଟ ଡିସ୍କସନ ପାଇଁ। ତେଣୁ ମୁଁ ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ପଏଣ୍ଟ ଯାକ, ଇମ୍ପୋର୍ଟାଣ୍ଟ ଥିମ୍ ଯାକ ପିକଅପ୍ କରିଛି, ତେଣୁ ତାକୁ